You can say it. It
we're
just has to
on.
not.
We're here.
Uh-oh.
We're on.
Uh-oh.
We're live.
Uh-oh. Hello.
Hi. That was very close.
Well, so what we were talking about was how you should let us talk on the show while you're getting ready, and then I said, well, it's only a matter of time if you let us do that before we say all the banned words.
Yeah. Well, I want you to be able. I like that idea of everyone being able to talk beforehand. I really like that idea.
We should do it.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Okay, so
we should hang out a little bit before 11, and we'll hang out, and then when it's the go live screen, we can hang out, but it'll be little candid moments, and everyone will get parasocially attached to us, and it'll seem like it's just us being friends, but it's actually very staged and calculated and cynical.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
But it'll get these hogs money, and that's the important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, hi everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to episode 7 of Red Planet. I hope everyone in the chat is doing well. A lot of you have stuck around from the stream I was just doing to watch Red Planet right now, and I really appreciate that. So thanks for sticking around. And those of you who just showed up, welcome, welcome. We are missing our comrade. He's not able to be with us this very moment. So just want to let everyone know that we could take a moment to appreciate Tim. No, Tim.
I was really trying not to laugh. Thanks. Someone in the chat said, "Oh no, Tim's fucking dead."
Imagine if Tim was just dead, and then someone said, "Oh no, Tim's fucking dead."
I know. How smart would you feel then, chatter?
Yeah.
What the hell?
Not so funny now, is it?
All right, exactly.
But he's just off vibing. He's just off somewhere.
He's chilling. He's doing something.
He's in his lane.
It's very fair.
He's moisturized. He's thriving.
That's right.
Anyways, so yeah, today again, I've yet to implement those technical solutions that I was bragging about the other time. So we're still gonna have our friendly technical issues that we always have, which is whenever the guest shows up, we have to rearrange windows and everyone gets cropped all funny. So chat, just stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for that.
Get ready for it. Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
So we should do our screenshot though.
Okay.
Okay. Chat, say hi. Chat. We're about to do our screenshot. Everyone say hi. Everyone be cute. Here we go. Okay, that's good. Perfect. Excellent.
Brilliant.
Whew.
Okay,
right.
So also, what do you think, and I don't know if chat, if this title is going to be sufficient, because I named the title OpSec, and I'm realizing that a lot of chatters, including myself, either aren't familiar with this term or maybe weren't until recently, and maybe they need a little bit more. So
do you think clickbaity? Like how not to get infiltrated by the police?
How to prevent a cop hack?
How to stop fuckeries?
No. I don't think that's.
I feel like it's going to cover a lot of topics, and we'll get to it in a second. But like, I feel like one of the most clickbaity thing we could go for is that it is a way to. One of the things it will stop is undercover cops getting in your org. So
how to prevent police infiltration?
Yeah, that's great.
Whoa.
Wow. Holy shit.
Uh-oh.
That's some real shit. Yeah.
And for the lawyer watching this back through later, this is just a clickbaity title.
That's all we're doing.
With other
clickbait.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me get that screenshot we just took.
Cool.
Anyways, yeah. So let's get started. Do we have news to start with?
Yeah, but I have a few things, but a couple of them are so I feel like my bias shows through all of the news articles that I've picked out this week. One thing, it's been a bad week for Elon Musk, which makes it a funny week for everybody else.
We were just shitting on him and my stream. We were watching him give a commencement speech to a university to try to motivate people.
And the other two things I have to talk about are trans related. So maybe while I talk through this, someone else might, I don't know if either of you have other stuff you want to think about adding on. But bad week for Elon Musk. 2 quick things. I'll drop them in. I'll drop them in the chat so you can get them on screen if you want. The first is that California is suing Elon Musk's Tesla, alleging it runs a racially segregated workplace and discriminates against black employees. Actually, if people remember this, a little while ago, a black employee of Tesla came forward saying that he was, having people calling him a monkey and saying the racial
N-word.
slurs, just like constant. Yeah, the N-word, like loads of shit constantly. And if you go in and look into that, I mean, it says it in the second paragraph of that tweet even, but let's read that. Black workers report being concentrated in parts of its factory, one called the segregation. Parts of the factory, one called the plantation by workers, and hearing slurs up to 100 times a day. Very cool. Very cool and normal. I think Musk is actually stepping down from Tesla following this and maybe other stuff. So the other thing, which is bad week for Elon Musk, is of course, and I don't know if you already covered this, Nicole, in your stream, but is of course that they've been trailing Elon Musk's Neuralink, the plan to put a little machine inside the brains of Musk fanboys. For what purpose? I don't know. Posting from your brain. Post while you're asleep. Never stop posting. I have no idea.
Always be posting.
Some people, some Elon Musk fans talk about it as if it will make them smarter, and it's like this whole singularity thing and all of this nonsense. But the trials on monkeys, most of them died. All of them experienced horrific pain. Some of them were biting off their fingers. Yeah, it's really fucked. And Musk wants to do human testing this year.
He said previously, this is of course genius, Elon Musk has said previously that we should be ready for human trials in 2021. And then he said, you need to push it back now. We'll hopefully get human trials done in 2022. And if this is anything like his predictions about when the pandemic would have ended, then I'm going to guess that he is an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about. But again, I don't know what I'm talking about, maybe because I'm no genius, and we are talking about a genius, Elon Musk.
Maybe if you got the special USB that makes monkeys bite off their fingers and die, you would understand what's so good about this.
Gotcha. And
they just knew something that we didn't.
Right.
That's what it is.
Can I just say, from being the resident vegan on this panel, I am especially horrified by this, and I had a bunch of stuff to say about it on my stream. But it's just a really disgusting example of the ramifications of the commodification of sentient life and the ownership of others that should not be owned. Like, no one's born into this world nobody is born into this world to be someone's slave, to be someone's thing to prod and poke at. And they had to drill holes on these monkey skulls to implant these chips, if anyone doesn't know the gruesome details. And yeah, like, one of them immediately after the operation was uncontrollably vomiting, like just in complete distress, then collapsed in fatigue and exhaustion from that, and then died. And turned out they suffered from I think it was a brain embolism
Jesus Christ.
Because of this procedure. And this is not the only monkey that had these like horrible was dealt with this. And unfortunately, I'm not trying to excuse Elon Musk here, but unfortunately, animal testing is pretty horrific. And so I think it's important that we not only examine this issue as Elon Musk sucks, this entire thing sucks for the purpose he's trying to create this. He's basically a rich fuck who's trying to play Sims with the world. These monkeys are nothing to him. We people are nothing to him. Like, that's the easiest and the most basic way to understand how this asshole functions. And it's not just a him problem either. This is also this is pretty much how the ruling class. That's why they are what they are. But yeah, so like I wanted to point out that this can demand a larger conversation, which is not so appropriate for Red Planet, but in general, if anyone's interested in having it anytime on my channel, about the ramifications, the larger ramifications of this commodification and ownership of others, whether it be human or non-human animal.
Yeah, I may not walk the walk myself. I'm not a vegan like Nicole is, but I completely agree. The sooner we get to the Star Trek standard where any sentient life is not exploitable because it because it's wrong, because it's exploitation
enslavement
is wrong.
Enslavement is wrong. Period.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool. Very cool. But yes,
that was Elon Musk's bad week. The next thing is a bad week for trans people in the UK, unfortunately. So I did a stream about this. I will drop it in. I will drop the link to the stream in chat, and people can go check out that VOD if they want to. Basically, what I've dropped in the group chat here is the Vice article: leaked EHSE guidance reveals plans to exclude most trans people from bathrooms. In short, it's a bathroom bill. They are pushing for a bathroom bill. TERFs have wriggled their way into all these positions of power with the help of evangelical far-right American money, which makes them have a massively disproportionate influence. And now the Equalities and Human Rights Commission, which is supposed to be like our independent regulator of equalities and human rights, is there pushing for, well, just to clarify, it was leaked plans, not their official new position, but it was what they were preparing to publish.
And multiple LGBTQ plus people have left the company, citing the fact that
tons and tons.
Yeah, it's gone incredibly transphobic.
Over half of the employees attended meetings and I think voted for a strike. So in the coming little time, two things. Actually, it's on the screen right now. Good Law Project. The Good Law Project is a fantastic thing. So if people want to support something right now, go make a donation to the Good Law Project right away. It's one of the only organizations fighting for trans people in the UK in a really meaningful way. They're just a legal team. They're very comparable to the ACLU, but for Britain. And obviously, because so much of what Britain is doing right now is persecuting trans people, a lot of what they are doing is fighting back against the persecution of trans people. So it's very cool. They may be liberals, but they are still doing something really meaningful, and I think they deserve your money. But if you want to support something in the near future, there will definitely be a strike of EHRC workers, and that's one to watch out for and have solidarity with. I'm dropping my the VOD of my stream in chat because I read through this article, and then I sort of went backwards in time through previous articles where Vice has been doing stellar reporting on all of this, and I just went through their backlog, looking at the whole history of TERFs coming into the EHRC, because it's a pretty recent thing in the last couple of years, basically because Nicole, you probably don't know this name, but Liz Truss is our Women's and Equalities Minister. She's also our Foreign Secretary, and she's a horrible TERF. And she just really desperately hates trans people. And she gets to appoint who the head of the EHRC is, and so she appointed this woman, what's she called, Baroness Faulkner. And it's all very cool and good situation, and everyone is terrified, rightfully so. And so cis people have a good think about what you can do to support trans people in the UK. This is something that I've been highlighting a few times over, but in many ways, the situation for trans people in the UK is worse than in lots of parts of America. And that's really hard for a lot of people to conceptualize, both Americans who can see how shit America is, and British people who love to compare Britain to America to be like, look how stupid and reactionary and bigoted they all are, but actually very literally like, this push is comparable to a Texas or a Tennessee or what have you, attempts at a bathroom bill. No, it hasn't gone into force, but that's the intention. So,
it's an interesting effect you're just pointing out, because I know that America's the worst in all these areas effect can be very protective for fascist governments, like in, say, Canada's fascist.
Yes.
And Canada's has been able to get away with it for a very long time, largely in part because, first of all, their fascism is kind of like a much lamer version, in which it's kind of like, it's I have a whole thing. Rob Rousseau can talk about this at great length. He's very good at discussing Canada's fascism and describing how it's like personality acts in a certain way compared to America's fascism, like Trump. But what you're describing, this America is bad and it always has the worst transphobia, the worst this and that. It can be protective for bad things in the world. And it can also serve to make America think that no one else has it worse than them, and so that can protect, like you were saying, it protects the transphobia in Britain, while also giving Americans who are allies or trying to be allies a false impression of how bad it is, because it is really hard to rid myself as an American of the idea that everything isn't the worst here in terms of a lot of issues.
Yeah, and I mean, just
in the
this
Imperial
week
Core.
we had our planning call. Right? And I was saying how my 3 cis co-hosts, unfortunately for them, they're working on it, but they you guys were suggesting about having like American guests on when we do our DIYing episode, and I was having to explain that actually like DIYing is much less of a thing across America. It's not a completely uniform thing, but in many states, in Planned Parenthood, you can just go in because there's just this informed consent model, and actually it's much worse across Europe and in particular in the UK. So it's it is a bizarre thing. I think that there is one more thing I should highlight, which is again UK-based news. So again, we're definitely seeing my bias.
Oh, I want to quickly highlight that this person, Baroness Faulkner. If you need more like evidence of, or at least the Equality and Human Rights Commission, or the EHRC, it turns out that if you need more evidence, they're meeting with the LGB Alliance.
Yes.
Which is, if you didn't know, the LGB Alliance is just a hate group against trans people that's trying to front. Yes. It's trying to front as some queer thing by being like, we're LGB, we're supportive of gay people. It's like you're just an anti-trans group that's like TERFs trying to cloak your transphobia. Well, yeah, but like what I'm trying to describe is the mechanic. Like TERFs will try to say feminism is what we're trying to do here, and that's why we're transphobic. And this is, my understanding is they're doing the whole like, we care about gay people and that's why we're transphobic, I'm guessing. But I think it's all
is what they're aiming for, but they do absolutely fuck all.
That's the funny thing is that like what you're describing would make sense if someone was trying to pretend to be queer and like say, oh, trans people are bad or whatever, you know. But they don't make an effort to do that whatsoever. They're just like straight transphobic. They don't do any work for queer people. They don't highlight any queer issues. Multiple people who are part of the LGBT Alliance are incredibly biphobic. And obviously like, this is like, it's super fucking annoying for me because like I can see, as soon as I started seeing the transphobia, it was like, well, they'll come for me next. You know what I mean? That's how it goes, right?
And Baroness Nicholson, who works closely with J.K. Rowling on a women's shelter charity, which obviously they work hard to deny homeless trans women access to homeless shelters. She wrote a letter where she said the normal sexualities are heterosexuality and homosexuality, and I was like, oh, there goes the B. There it is.
Yeah, and
LG. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah. Next thing you know, it'll just be the L and the G, or I don't know, whichever one. I don't know. Who knows?
And then the Openly link actually leads on very well from that. This is a news story that inspired. I think we might want to have a discussion about queer rights worldwide, inspired a little bit by this particular news story. So basically, the House of Representatives has passed a bill called the Global Respect Act, which means that people who are so individuals or state representatives who are on record as having committed abuses against LGBT people supposedly will be denied entry into the US. There was some confusion when this was reported on Twitter, where some people thought that it was saying like anyone from a country that persecutes LGBT people won't be allowed in, but it's not saying that. It's saying if you're an individual person and you've got like anti-LGBT hate crimes on your record, you won't be allowed. If you're a state actor, you are a minister in a government that persecutes trans,
this terminology
LGBT
is
people.
Kind of confusing. I can see the confusion.
It is. It's a badly worded tweet, but the thing they're reporting itself is still horrific because exactly in the same dynamic we were just talking about, it sets this standard which is to do with like, we're so much better. Us here in the Imperial Core, we're so much better than them. And so you queer people should feel, you should be grateful for how we treat you because at least we're not them. You know what I mean? Like I just mentioned Liz Truss. Obviously, like Liz Truss, an extremely transphobic person who is pushing really hard to just legislate trans people out of existence. There's no way that she wouldn't be allowed into the US, right? Because she's a minister in the government of one of the US's biggest allies. There's no way that the US would recognize the abuses against LGBT people in the UK. And so this act only refers to people in the imperial periphery.
Yeah, I can see being extremely Islamophobic off the bat. Just being like...
Oh, absolutely.
100%, yeah.
And so maybe we'll do an episode talking maybe about queer people around the world and what, you know, the shape of things, because it is an interesting conversation. But speaking of extremely Islamophobic, how about that link just above the openly one, the New York Times? Breaking news, President Biden is moving to split $7 billion in frozen Afghan central bank assets between 9/11 victims' families and humanitarian aid in Afghanistan. Oh boy, the US could just pass an act anytime printing more money than this if they wanted to give humanitarian aid to Afghanistan. The splitting up of the Afghan central bank assets between 9/11 victims' families, that's war spoils. That is just war spoils. Yeah. Afghanistan didn't have anything to do with 9/11. It is purely just America went in and has looted and has come back and now is sharing the spoils.
And it's going to continue to loot as well, you know.
Of course. Yeah, this is the thing. There are no poor countries. There are countries that are being looted. Yeah.
They're overexploited. Is that what... Fucking yellow video. What's the yellow video guy? What's his name again?
Who's the yellow video guy?
Yellow video guy said that. Like,
yellow video. Yeah. Jesus.
Poor countries or whatever. These countries aren't poor or like under something. They're overexploited. Parenti. Yeah. What did he say? Chat.
Michelle Parenti. Michael Parenti.
I'm feeling real dumb today, for the record. So this is gonna be a rough stream.
Don't worry, Nicole. I'm right there with you. I've got no idea
just
about
yellow
OpSec.
Video guy.
I'm gonna be doing a whole lot of listening.
Here is thrown off our vibe. Tim was the one who he was the glue holding us all together, and we're just spinning out.
I know.
That's right.
Who knew this whole time?
Who knew?
That bassy voice just calming everything down. Yeah.
And that's all the news
they're
I have
overexploited,
this week.
Oh yeah, they're not underdeveloped. They are overexploited. That's it. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a pretty banger quote.
Mule, Nicole, any news?
No, I've got nothing for you. Pretty much everything that you said. Other than I don't know if you want to talk about Tony Blair putting his 2 fucking pence in when no one gives a shit.
War criminal and registered passenger on the Lolita Express, Jeffrey Epstein's plane, Tony Blair, has given an interview at the Times saying that you can't even say you're a woman anymore. You get locked up just saying you're a woman, which is a ridiculous thing to say. Nobody asked Anthony.
That's the thing. It's like nobody asked. That's what's incredible. It's like just seeing how frequently transphobia just comes out of people's mouths. Just no one is asking. Tony Blair is just like,
I mean, it's whatever. It's whatever, really. It's like
if Americans aren't really like that, you know, familiar with Tony Blair, other than like, oh, he was the prime minister once. Like, it would be basically the same as George W. Bush saying something like that. Do you know what I mean?
It's no big surprise. Like the guy said that to deal with black crime, we have to deal with black culture. Like, he's an evil piece of shit. He killed 500,000 people in the Middle East. It's pretty straightforward. This is why I introduced him as war criminal and alleged
He's
nonce.
He's an alleged nonce, yeah. 100%.
So there you go.
Needs to be in the Hague. It needs to be in the fucking Hague.
Right. So I'm a lot of news. The last thing is something we touched on last week, and we need to remember to say this every week until we do the episode, but we are going to do an episode about trans DIYing. If you're in the chat right now and you know what that is, then you know what that is, and I don't need to explain. So we're looking for more information so that we can do accurate reporting about the situation around the world. For example, we've had somebody get in touch from Korea.
That's awesome.
But we already have things covered for the US and UK. So if you're outside the US and UK, please get in touch through our Twitter. Everything will be confidential. Everything will be anonymous, and your DMs will be deleted once they've been put into the notes. My other co-hosts won't even see who you are, and I promise to absolutely forget. So if you get in touch, it could really help out. We're doing an episode on trans DIYing, and it's going to be a good episode. I'm excited for it. But yeah, we'd love to have more information from around the world. I've already got a lot of really good sources, but people's firsthand accounts are infinitely valuable. There's an approach, right? The scientific method where we take anecdotal evidence as being a little shaky and unhelpful. But when we're talking about reporting, and when we're talking about mutual aid, and when we're talking about people getting stuff done to help themselves and protect one another, actually your story matters a lot. So if you are from outside the US or UK, please send us a DM, red_planet_TV, and let us know, basically. There you go. There we go.
Yeah. I wanted to say one more thing, but it's not good news, because I know we haven't really done a lot of good.
I bombarded with bad news today.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, maybe but just, it's not bad news. It's just like a PSA sort of. Just anyone who's wondering, the Ottawa occupation, the so-called trucker occupation, is not an occupation of working class people. It is a ruling class, pissy, shit my pants occupation of anti-vaxxer, fucking like petite bourgeoisie douchebags, for the record.
Classic.
Yeah.
Can we get Rob on to talk about that? That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, he's done a really great coverage on it.
They tried to do one in the UK last weekend.
Flew Trucks Clan. Oh my god.
Yeah. That's right. They are basically, they're just Nazis. Like, I think the first thing that I heard
they
about
literally have waved not swastika flags and Confederacy flags. So yeah. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and like so many of these people, they're like driving pickup trucks. So that's the thing. There are some truckers, because you're always going to have some people showing up thinking that this is a thing for them, because they get mixed up and they don't know anything about class consciousness, or they don't have any. But so many of the participants are just people that own their own companies, that are just also people that get COVID relief money from the government to keep them afloat while everyone is just being evicted and so on and so forth. Like, these are small
just like
business
January
owners.
6th.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that makes
it's
sense.
just like January 6th. Exactly.
Yeah. And that makes sense when you think about it, because obviously from a small business owner's point of view, they don't want COVID rules. They don't want vaccine mandates. They want to get as much, money from the public as possible. So they see that as like an attack on their income.
I'll quote the great Do Not Eat and say small business owners are, as a rule, universally insane. It's good to remember.
Yeah, and small businesses are not moral businesses. They're not more moral than big businesses.
Not the good capitalism.
If you believe that small businesses are somehow more moral than big businesses, then you are, in my opinion, buying into capitalist propaganda that tries to.
Well, you've probably never worked for a small business if you're saying that, because small business owners are such pieces of shit.
Yeah, a lot of them are pieces of shit. Yeah. But like, one thing that I realized when I started doing videography and I started getting money on Twitch and I set up a self-employed thing, right? I realized you don't even really have to do a lot of stuff. You just have to write a couple words on a website and boom, you're ready to go. Do you know what I mean? They even just trust you to do your taxes yourself. Like when I first did my taxes, I was like, when's the guy gonna come? Do you know what I mean? Like, when's the guy coming to make sure I've got all my receipts that I've saved in the thing? And it doesn't even happen. With the little
square glasses and the tie and the pocket calculator.
It doesn't even happen. He's not real. Yeah. He's a made-up thing, right?
Oh, I know. I've met that guy, but he doesn't come. Yeah.
He's not. Yeah, there's not a guy. You could just do it. So, a lot of this stuff, what I'm basically trying to say is that, it's very easy to just, set up a business in any country and, there's not a secret business police that goes around and makes sure that you're trying to do stuff.
We don't need to revile these people. They're just people.
Yeah.
Often who are okay. Often the crucial difference is they're people who are okay exploiting someone who they work with every single day.
Right. They could do it to their face.
Yeah. Exactly. Shall we start the episode?
Sure.
Let's do it.
Yep.
I'm ready to learn.
Sick. So, Previously on Red Planet, we talked about how to keep your comrades safe at a protest or riot, and undoubtedly we will talk about it more in future. Last week we talked about housing insecurity and the inevitability of a mass squatting movement as the housing market does what it'll do and shits the bed. A big focus of the show is generally mutual aid, because systems that exist under modern capitalism are falling apart, overflowing, getting shut down, defunded, sabotaged, or simply disappearing. And this is a show about how to keep each other safe. So this week we're talking about how to organize safely and keep your organizing from being hacked, attacked, or infiltrated by fascists. This week we're talking about OpSec and InfoSec. There we go.
I love that. That was a great intro.
Aw, thanks,
I still don't know anything about it other than just like try not to get fedded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we go straight to guest, because I feel like there's
get her in.
Okay, so our guest this week is the lovely, powerful, knowledgeable Tia. She's great. She's a pal of mine. And I actually interviewed her for organizing interviews as well. So if you want to see this all in a little bit more of a structured interview format, that's on my channel. It just came out today. I forgot to push the public button on Friday. It should have been out a few days ago. Anyway, this is Tia, and she's very, very knowledgeable.
Hey, Tia.
Hello.
Can you hear us? Great.
Yes.
Howdy.
Hey, I'm gonna quickly fix everything. Hi, Tia.
So I've introduced you by saying that you're very knowledgeable, but I should probably add on that you have nearly 8 years experience working in naval intelligence, right?
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So very knowledgeable.
Well, primarily, actually, to be clear, I was on loan and working for law enforcement purposes. So that's important to note, yeah.
So Mule was just asking what the flippin' heck OpSec even is. So
what's going on with it? What does it mean?
You're gonna have to do a lot of schooling today.
Okay, so operational security is the behaviors that we take on in order to keep information that isn't secret out of enemy hands. So like you know that you and your buddies are going to go to a protest on Friday. You don't go out Thursday to the bar and talk about the protest a bunch, right? Because then everybody who's in listening distance, they hear about the protest. They know it's going to start at 4 p.m. They know that there's going to be 15 to 20 people who are committed, and possibly up to 20 more who are like maybes, and etc. Right? And this is stuff that somebody who wishes to harm our movements would be it would be of interest to them, regardless of if it's actionable or not. It might be the key piece of information they don't have to that allows to sabotage them to, yeah, exactly.
Okay, and that makes sense.
And then InfoSec is the other half of this, and to a large extent, none of the activism that we've seen in the last few decades has needed InfoSec, because there's no centralized group which commands the sort of practices which require secrecy. But many of the techniques and things that are important for InfoSec end up being important for sort of evading surveillance in like either illegal surveillance, which happens all the time, even though they'll say it doesn't, or legal surveillance of people who aren't doing any crimes, but who've been authorized as surveillance targets, right?
Yes. Okay, I actually know what you're on about now, because I've heard on It Could Happen Here, Chelsea Manning talk about this stuff, I think. And she said...
I know she talked about it on... the It Could Happen Here daily,
yeah, and she was talking about stuff like like we were talking about it with Anansi a couple of weeks ago as well, where like the you want to be like the nobody, right? You want to be just like the plain guy kind of thing, just in general. I guess I don't really know like what the benefits of doing that on a day-to-day sort of life is, but I guess if you're going to be going to protests regularly, you want to like we spoke about having a set of clothes specifically for protests, right? And don't use them for anything else kind of thing. Yes. I don't know if that would fit into it.
that is actually like something in OpSec is the habits that we keep that make it easy for us to be like for an analyst who's like devoted, like their 9-to-5 job is sitting down and looking at every piece of information about you that's been gathered and trying to figure out what can be inferred outside of that information. And like, you know, if you find out somebody's email address, most people's email addresses are linked to every bit of their social media, and so you can very quickly search out every social media account they have, and then every social media account they have has you know, names and aliases, and oftentimes they'll have names or similar names and then pictures that are spanning across, and so you can be like, okay, it's got a similar name but the same picture, or you know, the pictures are the same themes with you know, instead of like Joe Biden, this was Jay Biden with a, you know, a similar looking person in the picture. We can assume that's the same person. You know, and so basically every single person I know, like I don't know anybody, including myself, who's actually went through and done the work to make sure that none of their accounts that they do protest stuff on have nothing in common with their other accounts. I had an air gap for a while, and then I just got lazy with it, and now it's just part of my like larger account that I know that could be like webbed out if anybody.
You defined air gap there?
Oh yeah, air gap is that complete separation between your two identities, where you you have pseudonyms, you know, like a large list of pseudonyms and you know, a bunch of different sets of names, no overlapping passwords. Like, you know, if you have something that's a two-factor authentication, you you know, you might even have different accounts for whatever two-factor authenticator you use, and things to that effect, so that they're not, any one thing doesn't compromise all of it.
Right, absolutely.
This is great. This is absolutely, sorry to interrupt. This is like, yeah, this is absolutely dope shit. I love this.
This is going to be one of those episodes where people should be taking notes.
Yeah, I'm taking a lot of notes. The chat, Peppo G, right?
Yeah. So, and then the next thing that we that we're going to want to talk about is the title of this, which is how to prevent police infiltration. Thank you for that, because you know the spoiler for this, because you interviewed me before about this. That there is no way to prevent police infiltration.
That is correct.
They are already in our movements. They are already at our protests. They are, you know, already in the command structure if you have a hierarchy in your organization.
I set them up and I knock them down. I knew this was coming. It's a funny thing. Like, basically people can be more or less attuned to this kind of stuff, but there's no way you can just be like, we are 100% safe. There are no moles. There are no cops, right? Whatever. Like, I was talking to a friend just yesterday, who was talking about a lot of protest work that she does and how she's like constantly spotting undercover cops from their shoes. Like the cops in her area just like really aren't good at blending in. And that she was just telling a story of like talking to someone who's very young and had just joined and had come to the first event and saying to other people like, that one's a cop, and saying to the person like, how are you doing, junior detective? And they were like, I don't know what you're talking about. And the other people like not believing her that this person was a cop, but like her just being like, well, let's just see where, like, let's just not share anything. Let's just, you know, don't tell her anything, and then see where she goes. And then like the next thing she did was, I think they were at a protest. Yeah, they were at a protest. Like, then the next thing she did was go up to the line of police, and then the next thing that happened was the police cattled them all. So
interesting.
It was like, oh yeah, that was a cop. It's like you can be more attuned to this kind of stuff, but there really isn't actually, like, you know, and then that's why it's important to understand this stuff, right, Tia? Because this is like, you can understand how to keep your information safe, your operations safe, but you can't be like, I'm sure 100% that nobody involved has ulterior motives.
Yeah, there's the thing that gets passed around a lot that's especially fun, and it's like, you know, the FBI talking about how difficult it is to infiltrate activist organizations, because the amount of reading that's required is is too much, and it's hard to cut off our sources of income because we're all just poor college students. And you know, what's the source of income? Well, there's no income. It's got a zero operating cost. The only thing that they're wasting is time.
Yes, like, there was a pretty similarly funny, like funny in the same way, but it's not as relevant. So this is a derail, but which was TERFs talking about having tried to infiltrate trans rights activists and understand what they're all like, and it was an amazing report.
The trans lobby.
Yeah. It was an amazing little report to read. Never once did they like it really click and then just go, oh, we're just talking about a disenfranchised, marginalized group of like massively disproportionately under the poverty line, just people, you know, just human beings. But like this report that's like detailing like the transsexual usually doesn't have any kind of drawing room meeting space in their house. And I'm like, yeah, man, because we're not all middle class Guardian writers. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Well, this is I'm loving all this so far. So like you mentioned something before. It's about making sure. So you were saying because obviously it's impossible to stop cops from getting in the movement, right? Mm-hmm. And you were saying it's about making sure no one involved. Sorry, I totally blanked out. Was it like knows too much? Did you say?
It is. So as soon as let's say a person has done, whether or not a person has done a crime, they are now in police custody. The police have confiscated their cell phone, and you know it's got the biometric thing, so it just needs their face. Well, now they pointed at your face because they have physically you in custody, and it unlocks. And now they have your Facebook and you know and your Twitter and your Signal and etc. And you know they can subpoena the records, or just you know from your phone since they have access to it, and use that in a court of law if they want, and all sorts of things like that, and use all of the numbers of all of the people you have in Signal, and which is why the thing is never bring your cell phone to a protest. Always like Sharpie on the phone numbers you need. But the and this is why you want it, so that that there's this air gap between your identities, so that if you do have to bring your cell phone, or you know you weren't planning on being arrested, you weren't planning on being anywhere near the police presence, and they still came for you, or they came for you not at a protest, because retributive policing is a very common thing, especially in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so you didn't know to leave your cell phone at home that day, and now you're in police custody, etc. So that's why you know doing the hard work of logging on when you need it and logging off when you're done is
logging off is hard work. I agree.
Can't be done.
Can't be done. Yeah, that's true. But I get what you're getting at. Like, we need to think through that worst case scenario, and if that person gets arrested and then their phone is open and all their contacts are open and it's fair game legally to the police, does that then bring down your whole operation, or doesn't it? Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know every single step along the way there are things where, depending on how much work you're putting in on the street, depending on how integral you are to the operation, is how much work you should be putting into these steps and this sort of like shift between and like removal of identity. We called them funny names, literally just you fake a different name online than offline, and then maybe even like using pseudonyms in real life, like not using your human name with other people, and that's actually super common.
We talked about this in the Squatters episode last week, but if you are in court, you don't have to provide ID. They will need a name to refer to you to refer to you by, but unless you're fully going into the system, you can actually just say, something that people call you, some nickname or whatever. If you did find yourself you're not required to give ID. At least that's the case in the UK from the Squatters Handbook there, but I don't know the case everywhere. But yeah.
Someone's asking if that's true in the US as well. Is it true in the US?
I do not know the answer to that question, but you can always tell the pigs to go fuck themselves.
There is that too.
Yes.
Tira, I'm really glad that No, I just want to say that I'm really glad that you pointed out. I caught something what you said earlier, which is even if you weren't planning on getting arrested, and the reason I wanted to point out that small part is I know there's a lot of people watching this right now that, and this happens for so many conversations we have, not just on Red Planet, but just in political streams. A lot of people think that they're viewing things, but it's never going to be their personal problem. And how can you speak to how much people should probably can be considering this as a personal problem that they should care about? Like I know Sophie and I, we talked about this, it wasn't on Red Planet, but we had a conversation about surveillance and how like, it's not just for like super Antifa super soldier. Like we kind of, we all have to be very aware of how we are subjected to this surveillance and how we should give a fuck about it, and not just for like pragmatic reasons, but for like almost like ethical reasons, that we shouldn't become comfortable as like a species with like someone else just always being able to look at our genitals whenever they want to look at our genitals and things like that. So anyways, I just wanted to touch on that. I don't know if you had anything to say. If not, that's cool. But like I know there's a lot of people in the chat that are thinking, oh, this is all information that's very cool and stuff, but it doesn't apply to me because I'm not like super hardcore or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm never gonna get arrested for being in Bad Bunny's chat.
Yeah, I mean, like just historically, like you can look at examples of this where lists of people who need to be arrested are pretty constantly and consistently maintained by the state police.
Yeah.
And like just there are instances where it's anybody who's ever spoken in front of a crowd, or anyone who's even been in that kind of crowd who gets put on that list. And anybody who gets identified during an interrogation session, this goes 3, 4, 5 people out. And so and with the amount of overreach they have, they can very easily identify that, okay, this IP is associated with this physical address, 4 people living at that house, 4 captives, like things like that. And our police have the legal power to do a no-knock raid in the entirety of the United States, and I have one of those feelings that the entirety of Europe probably has similar powers, even if they like to say that America is more horrible. And
absolutely. I mean, the UK is like a much more surveilled place than at least most of America. The line I gave on the stream the other day with Nicole was the 2 arguments people use to preserve their cognitive dissonance about surveillance is like, I'm not doing anything wrong, and I don't have any reason to want to challenge the system. Therefore, it's fine that I'm being surveilled. And those 2 arguments still fundamentally rest on the assumption that the thing that is surveilling you is moral and an arbiter of morality. Because if you're not doing anything wrong, right, that requires the thing that is watching you and deciding whether you're doing something wrong to agree with you about whether you're doing something wrong, right? Yeah. And so if you believe that the state is moral, and that's fine for it to surveil you. I don't know what you're doing in this chat.
I was about to say, I'm not really sure why you're watching this stream if you're that opinion.
Yeah.
There's a small part of us that kind of feel that way. I think some of us are so de-radicalized or radical, whichever way you want to think of it, that we're completely rid of that sentiment. But I think a lot of us still have a teeny tiny bit of it. Like, I know that I still have a teeny tiny bit of that sentiment, that feeling that, oh well, you know what, there must be some sort of
who can stop a good guy with the state, or a bad guy with the state's a good guy with the state, something like that.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but it's something you have to train yourself out of, consciously.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. Whatever.
So yeah, I mean, this definitely ties into conversations about surveillance. Hopefully we'll get it deeper into it. We've got a couple more hours to get into stuff, but I have a topic that I want to go through first. So, and I'm finding my notes. Sorry.
Do we want to do a tweet?
Yeah, you know the most
to say that we're now.
Oh, another tweet with us all in.
Everyone wants to pose again.
You need to pose for it. Okay. Everybody smile for the camera.
Okay, we're good. Cool.
Okay, cool.
Got it.
Found my notes. Right.
Perfect.
Tia, you, I don't know what level of tech expert you consider yourself to be, but you have made tech suggestions to me before, and I've got a few things I want to talk through, which are to do with like using tech alternatives that will be more private. Like we know obviously that like WhatsApp, while claiming to be encrypted, is owned by Meta and just works like in direct collaboration with like the CIA. And you know, Apple likewise say that all of their stuff is protected, and then it's been exposed that they're absolutely not. We can't necessarily advise people to, you know, get phones that aren't made by either, that don't belong to either Google or Apple, but there are alternatives to, you already mentioned Signal, for example. There are alternatives to like WhatsApp that you can use that do offer good encryption. So what's like, would you feel qualified to comment on if I talked through, like, brought up a few different alternative platforms, like the kind of safety levels or whatever?
Yeah. I feel like I would, Signal's the one that I remember specifically. It was good last time I like really was paying attention to that stuff. Wink.
Cool.
And Proton Mail for emails, but all of this is constantly riding on like exploitation, like every 3-letter agency has an exploitation division that is constantly trying to figure out ways into, through, underneath, etc. And ways to convince people to give themselves backdoors and etc. and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there are, it's constantly, changing, and you can never really tell what's going to continuously be good. All you can do is hope to frustrate it and make it harder, because every single level of difficulty or encryption is something that's going to take more of your time and be more of a pain in the ass. And that's
the trade-off between your safety and how much of your own time you're wasting, I guess,
and how much of theirs you're wasting.
True. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's the I think that in a conversation about surveillance, something important to remember is that surveillance is always, or that if it's if it's obeying the law, surveillance works retrospectively. Like someone has to be, have done something for them to be a big enough deal for state intelligence networks to be paying attention at all in order to blah blah blah, right? Like the state isn't literally the state hasn't got a guy on every person all the time.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
you can get about 10 to 20 people of coverage per person if you're working hard.
Right. I'm just realizing with your experience that it's just gonna be some chilling stuff now. But yeah, I'm trying to go back into my notes now, and I'm a little afraid. But anyway, I wonder if there's a guy for Red Planet that would whip. Hey guy, what's up?
Hey Red Planet guy, what's going on?
So
real quick, I want to just real quick thank you, It's Socialism or Barbarism. Thank you for the 5 subs. That was very kind of you. It was an hour ago, and it's hard for us to pause because the conversations we have, but I think an hour every hour is a good amount. So thank you so much for the 5 subs. I appreciate it.
So this next section, when I'm saying about taking notes, take some notes.
There will be a quiz.
Tech possibilities. No, there won't be a quiz. But if you're watching and you are invested in organizing something and you want to do it safely, these are some tech possibilities for not doing it on platforms that may already have been compromised by intelligence and by the state. So we already talked about Signal instead of WhatsApp. Any further comment before we go to
that? Signal instead of instead of Discord too. Like if you're just talking about shit posting, talking about your day, and actually, to be honest, talking about anything physical in your day, probably a bad idea. But if you're shit posting, complaining about your family, talking about theory, do that on Discord. If you're talking about the, trying to get your friend to come to the protest on Friday, do that on whatever encrypted service you want. And I cannot stress this enough. Do the most encrypted version of whatever that service claims. Don't do something like send a voice message with your all of your exact plans, because very often those aren't encrypted. They're just sent as a recording. And so, like, if it's like, our SMS is fully encrypted end to end or whatever, then it's like, yeah, sure, send a text. Don't send an image. Like, don't write a Post-it note, take a picture of it. Like, what are you doing? Send a text.
Oh, my one more note before we move on from Signal is that although Signal is end-to-end encrypted, there is keylogging on some phones that people should look into, and it varies. But that like the predictive text of your keyboard works on it reading what you're writing all the time, and that is an exploit that has been covered as something that like intelligence agencies can use, is like what your phone is just writing, and that would allow them to have at least half of a text conversation. So it's worth checking if sorry, I know this is super vague details. I should have researched this more before doing the show, but like this is something that you can switch off, like the particular setting to do with your predictive text. I'm very sorry that was so vague. Maybe someone in the chat will hit me with a link later. But besides encryption, there's also like models of how data moves around and where data is stored. So the next thing I want to bring up is matrix or element. I think element is like a version of matrix. It's an implementation of matrix. So basically matrix is an alternative to Discord, right? You just said about like if you're doing your shit posting or whatever, do it in Discord, but it can be useful to have a space that is like Discord, right? That isn't just a group chat. And what's different about matrix is that it isn't all like is that the instance, the server, when we're talking about a Discord server, that server belongs to Discord, like the company, whereas matrix is a federated thing where you download the software and you run your own server, which means that everything that would be said on your server and discussed between your pals who are planning to stop deforestation or something would be within the physical like machine that you could be running yourself, which obviously gives, I think, a huge home advantage in terms of encryption and avoiding exploits. Tier, any thoughts?
That's one of the reasons why I said don't do it on Discord is because number one, even private Discords are somewhat public, and they're subpoenable records, but it's much harder to get the use that subpoena power for a private thing like Matrix if you're just one node connected to it as opposed to one of the actual like hosting servers. And so that's a good point, or a good thing entirely. But just like with you really can't prevent police infiltration because the police are already doing like infiltrating and subverting like from the start, right? So there's still no way to make sure that a space like this is not subverted. So as always, the amount of interest and conflict your group has with the authorities is the amount that you need to be paying attention. And by the time that you're to the point where a matrix is necessary, then you're going to want to be practicing the most rigorous forms of operational information security.
Yeah. Okay. So you would say that like still then that space isn't good for necessarily organizing in, or not?
Honestly, the number one place that you should be organizing is in person.
Of course.
Because that is the only place where that cannot be subpoenaed, that cannot be taken, like used by the state's tools to generate or manufacture guild.
Gotcha. I brought this up with the hosts, my co-hosts already, but one thing I've been considering is maybe moving Red Planet, possibly moving like our personal server where we like coordinate with guests, and possibly doing this with my Patreon Discord as well, moving to Matrix just to show people how it works and get people used to it, and then people can check it out, and if they want to run their own, then they can. I don't know if I'll do that, but it's a possibility.
Also, LOL at you running Matrix specifically is kind of funny. I don't know if we covered that already, but in case we haven't.
That's right, Matrix girl.
Yeah.
True. It's true. So there's a platform called Discourse, which I hadn't heard of before. I don't know if anyone else has. It's kind of forum-like. I don't know. Again, it's kind of a similar alternative to having like a Discord kind of space, and it's also open source. I think it's you running your own instance of it. I'm just naming a few different possibilities here. So there's Discourse, there's Mattermost, and there's Matrix. In particular, people like the implementation called Element. Instead of book recs this week, I don't have any book recs about OpSec and InfoSec and surveillance and stuff. I just have these tech recommendations instead that someone from my Patreon Discord passed along. So I'm just basically talking about different tech options. So there is a software suite called Nextcloud, which could give you the alternative to working in stuff like Google Docs or Office 365, which again, in terms of exploits, like Google Docs, just storing loads and loads of docs and stuff on the cloud, on Google servers. I don't know, not the best possible thing. Not that, as we've already covered, like, not that your organizing should be like a Word document of like all your plans anyway. That's a terrible idea. But just in case you found yourself needing to make a spreadsheet, I feel like Nextcloud is a possibility for people.
If your planning document is a Google Doc, you should rectify that. Remedy that.
Yeah, ideally. And then there's an interesting conversation I think to have about, well, I don't know how long, but it may be interesting, a conversation to have about funding, which is that in the first place, Patreon was conceived as something where people would be able to do activism and other like bold stuff and get money from supporters. But obviously Patreon blew up, and so it's got a lot of corporate interest. It has investors. It's moving towards a more hyper corporate model. So I think, I've got two recommendations here, which are LiberaPay, and they say the two main differences are the only real terms of service they impose are that payments must follow EU financial regulations and cannot be in exchange for goods or services. And two, they don't charge any fees. So that's neat. If people were looking to get supporters and they didn't want to use Patreon or couldn't use Patreon. And then the other one is, this actually isn't a pay thing. This one is a non-profit backed groupware platform called Mobilizon. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Mobilizon?
Mobilizon sounds correct.
It's Mobilizon if people want to look it up. But it sounds like something the Power Rangers would fight. But again, to compare to Mattermost, Discourse, or Matrix/Element, Mobilizon. Yeah, I guess right. Mobilizon. Yeah, that's what they're going for. Okay, Mobilizon is another kind of, you self-host your own community, and then you have control over where that all is, which is cool. And I also wanted to bring up Mastodon. Not that it's like secure, but I feel like there's a kind of parallel conversation where I guess maybe this is for another time. I'm not sure. I wanted to bring up Mastodon just because. So if people don't know, Mastodon is an equivalent to Twitter, where it's a federated system and people are running their own instances of servers. Like I was saying about Matrix before, like someone is running the server rather than it belonging to a company. And it's all completely public. I'm not saying any of this is secure in the slightest. It's a public platform where people are interacting very much like Twitter. But if you wanted to have a hangout spot that was quieter and slower and didn't have everything wrong with it that Twitter has, I feel like in this list of tech recommendations, I may as well shout out Mastodon as well. Hit me up at Sophie from Mars at octodon.social. There you go.
Because I hate Twitter.
Everyone hates Twitter, yeah.
There's
it's
always
a much
those people
smaller, more community-focused experience on Mastodon. It's very nice.
There's always those people that say, "Oh, I like it," and those people should shut up. I hate them. Whatever your weird, positive crap, just stop that. I like it here in Toxic Land.
My cishet male friends keep on telling me, actually, posting is fun. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not allowed to do posting anymore because people get mad at me. Once I grew tits, they didn't let me post anymore.
Well, that can't be right. No, that can't be right.
But it feels like Tia, your broader position on this is like tech maybe isn't like tech solutions maybe aren't that helpful.
My broader position on this is that like you can never rely on any tech solution as a way to get around the fact that surveillance is going to happen, because you never know when they're going to get through and to do it, so you never can really trust it as something that isn't surveilled or isn't later recorded and put onto another server. So like and so you can't you have to act like where you're communicating is currently being read in front of a court, and that's
absolutely
just
okay. That's a good line. That's like one of the good, really like small things. Chat, write it down. Always, no matter what.
I try and hold us to.
No matter where you're talking, even if you feel like you found a really secure thing, always talk like your shit's gonna be read back in court. That's cringe me out when I think of like all the inappropriate things I've written to people. like sexy miss, did you say, which maybe
and then,
with
and
regards
on
to
the
organizing
15th of July, the defendant said, I hope that you blast out my back walls tonight.
I want you to milk me like a cow's udders or something. Did you say this, ma'am?
You've been going on your stream being like, so how do people make the revolution happen? And I'm like, Nicole, shut the fuck up.
Well, yeah.
Anyway.
Good point.
But this is a journalistic show where we're just reporting on what's going on. We are absolutely in no way organizers. We're just a bunch of streamers hanging out and chatting about stuff.
And I was just joking. Like I was just making jokes for the record. I'd like to make jokes on my stream. It was just a joke.
Actually, I feel like I should announce this for the sake of chat. The FBI have made a report on the phrases redacted, parody, and in Minecraft. They know about those. They wouldn't have been a good legal defense before, but just so you're aware, the literal FBI has a memo that's like, leftists keep on saying in Minecraft to pretend that they don't mean that they're going to do a thing, and they do mean it.
And it's like, and this is something that I bring up in my stream a lot, because there are people who come into my stream, and obviously I'm not going to mention anyone's names, but they come into my stream and they say things like, Brandon. Like they come into my stream and they say things like, God, I can't wait to like, I don't even want to say it myself. Like what
to something that is something
illegal. Horrific that you could definitely get put in prison for. And it's like, you're never gonna do that. You're never gonna do that. You're chatting shit, mate. Do you know what I mean? B, like you're saying that in my chat, and I'm queer, sure, but I'm cis, right? So. I'm a cis guy, and I can only imagine that you're going into like trans people streams, people of color streams, and saying this stuff. And like like Tia says, imagine that being read back to you in court. Like, yo, did you go into like this person's stream and say like you want to do X to X, like because you said that, like we've got that on you, innit? You know what I mean? And it's not just protecting you; it's about protecting your comrades as well. You know what I mean? Like you can't just be going into people's chats on Twitch saying that. It's absurd.
This is really just I'm just really rewording the imagine it's going to be read in a court thing here. But one, I think, good rule of thumb is like the creators can implement as well as everyone else, like as well as if you're actually organizing is I have in my Patreon server for nobody to post about crimes, about crimes they're intending to do, because there is some drug discussion in my server to do with like how we believe that believing in legalization and these kind of discourses, and I'm saying like don't post that you're gonna do a crime, because everybody else right then who's read the message, I'm gonna do this crime in a minute, I'm gonna do this crime tonight, is then to some degree complicit in what you just said you were gonna do. So you have
it's
to remember
not just
that
about you and your edginess.
Endangering a whole community.
Right. Yeah. It's a very important lesson, especially I think a lot of people on the internet need to hear this. If you're super edgy and you're super like, I don't give a fuck, that's great and all, but some other people do, and you're jeopardizing them by announcing these things around them.
100%.
Also, is the official position of Red Planet that we do not condone crimes. I would like to make sure that everyone knows that. We do discuss them, but we do not condone them.
Yes, for example, we'll be doing this episode about trans DIYing and buying hormones outside of prescribed medicines is illegal. But we are we're reporting on how, as states let people down, they will find other solutions.
And additionally, those laws do change pretty drastically by your jurisdictions, and so some of the techniques might be legal in some places and illegal in others.
Right.
So
true.
Yep.
But preview for that episode, the homework is going to be for people to learn how to do injections, because one thing that isn't illegal is administering medicine, and you don't have to know where somebody got medicine, but you can help your pal out with their injection. Anyway.
Oh, yes.
To wrap up,
InfoSec, OpSec.
I want to read Useless's comment because it's a good one. So they're saying to tie it into previous streams, and this is with regards to like trying to get on secure platforms, but still, not just like being irresponsible about it. To tie it into previous streams, you can say, just like when you want to avoid being kettled in a protest, be a moving target within the different encryption services as they become available and are vetted as secure at that period of time. I think it's a pretty good tie-in, right? Yeah. Like just like that, we had that episode on riot strategy or riot tactics, protest riot tactics, and we discussed kettling, where cops do this thing where they just cluster protesters together, and it's not good. One of the ways that you can help prevent that from happening is to never just, always be a moving target. Never just like, don't just stay in one spot and just be at home there, because that's a really easy way to get like, quarantined in somewhere. And so similarly, I suppose we can apply that idea to this in like a virtual sense, I guess. Right?
Well, I really want to treat Tira as the expert here. So regarding more secure platforms, like, does it still apply what you were saying earlier about wasting someone's time who is intending to surveil you? Like, is that like right? Yeah.
The more effort that they have to do to establish identity and chronology, and who is speaking in which context to whom, and who they are in real life versus their whatever, the longer it's going to take them to put together, the further away from useful it will be for them. And
right, yeah, that's true. Okay.
And so go ahead.
The Antifada, thank you for the raid. I really appreciate it. We love you.
Yeah, welcome in, Antifada.
We love you. We love you. We love you.
Antifada, love the show. Hey, guys.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So thank you so much for the raid.
Yeah.
You're joining the conversation. Really great conversation about how to avoid like police infiltration, specifically virtually. So,
So this isn't about advice. This is about having a laugh. This bit, but I remember when Gab got shut down. People found out that they had added a feature that was like proving you're a verified patriot, where you could upload like ID documents to show that you were an American. So that if you were getting in arguments about how cool Trump is, then you would have a little badge being like definitely a patriot. And so when after January 6th, when Gab was shut down, they had everybody's like, they had a just direct from like, Cumlord 42069 saying, I want to do all these violent things to Joe Biden and his dog, and just in the data related to that account is like, actually Cumlord 42069 is Brian from Tennessee. You know, it was pretty amazing.
Phenomenal dub, to be honest.
Yeah,
wow. a huge L for Brandon from Ohio or wherever he said.
Yeah,
that was really funny. They had to like give their social security number, right, or something. Was that Parler?
Yeah.
Was that the thing for Parler?
Oh, it was Parler. I'm thinking of Parler, not Gab.
Okay, whatever. These are all the same thing. They're all the same type of thing.
Well, that's an interesting thing, and maybe we can steer back around towards the OpSec conversation here. But we have seen mass organizing across huge platforms, which, I mean, firstly is being allowed more because it's right wing, whereas if it was far left, if it was a similar number of far left agitators organizing together on Facebook and Gab and Telegram, gotta feel like they wouldn't get as far as January 6th on organizing through public platforms. But I do think it's interesting to see that, right? Because like that's about mass movements and there being and so many people going there and just being a culture in that space, a very politically skewed culture in that space. And while it's not good to then organize what your plans are, publicly on Parler, on Gab, on Telegram or Facebook, and I'm not advising for anybody to do that at all. I do think it's interesting that we've seen this repeated thing of the far right having their own platforms. And that's part of what I'm talking about with say, Mastodon, is that I do think people could get off of Twitter and get into a space where reliably that the people you're talking to, all are, other lefties, other pinko stinkos, have your own little anarchist server where you plan nothing. Absolutely nothing, because it's still just a public website where you're just, like, chatting with people, but just hang out. Like I do think that like hanging out there is cool.
Yep. What's I think a good way to click this back into OpSec is like the planning nothing thing is what's the gonna make it a social space as opposed to a sort of activist or organizing space, right? And the ability to coordinate and plan through something wirelessly shouldn't, we can communicate with each other and plan meetings of when we're actually doing the organizing and doing the plans. Hey, we should, we need to, these are the goals that we want to hit. How do we get people to show up for these goals, etc.? Like those things need to be handled in person anyway for almost all of them. And so, you organize when you're going to have in-person things over there, but don't ever like plan your protest stuff. Don't ever plan your messaging, your anything like that over the internet unless you're prepared to have it read back to you in transcript form. And in the end, a lot of this is going to come down to unless you're willing to have it read back to you as a court transcript, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think and I mean also like, you might say I'm willing to have this read back to me as a court transcript. You might apply the mindset where you're thinking all the things I'm saying so let's just take an example for a second that people are planning to get in the way of a development that would deforest an area and destroy local environment, right? People are planning an illegal action that everybody on Earth would agree is just they're doing a moral thing. Because again, actually, I say this to the NSA agent who's watching Red Planet. The moral conclusion of knowing that climate change is happening is that we should all do as much as we can to stop it. And even I think even the agent watching probably agrees. I think, but anyway, it's about the law, right? It's not about morality. Is my point, right? And so if you're trying to apply this like, everything I'm writing here, I should be okay with this being read in court. Like, it's not about what you think is okay. It is about the law, because like you might be planning to do something which will stop just something fucking horrible, just some awful fucking shit, right?
You and your buddy John Brown might have big plans, but however, comma.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not. It's not about that. It is about the law.
So I wanted to ask, because we touched on really briefly earlier about the UK not. I think I can't remember. Someone said maybe the UK is different in terms to like surveillance and stuff like that. But there is like a whole fucking plethora of stuff that you can read about how the UK is one of the most surveilled countries in the entire world. There is apparently one CCTV camera per every 32 people in the UK. So they number it around 25 million. So, you know, with that in mind, and then obviously, you know, considering the way that the CIA monitor the NSA monitor people.
The UK is crazy surveilled. It's
I knew CCTV was a thing, but like that's
how many of those? My real question is, how many of those are just in London, though?
Oh yeah,
right, exactly. Like there's so many. It's ridiculous as well because and again, when people, you know, when I first started learning about how, you know, corrupt and useless police are at actually like preventing crime and helping people, this kind of like cemented it in that I knew that the UK was one of the most surveilled states of all time. So like, how are police just like not catching people in the UK? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like,
right?
Reminds me of,
you know,
policing prevents crime in any fashion. Then what's up with that? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, why is that a thing?
I saw this tweet the other day. That was the few times I went on Twitter because I'm trying to limit it, but I did see something, you know, moments of good, and it was like, it said something like, if you see cops complaining about like a surge in crime, or no, if you see people complain about a surge in crime, know that we didn't defund them. We like increased funding. So this is them doing their best. Them doing their best is a surge in crime. Yeah. And also, I'm not even talking about how like crime, especially with what Tyr was like talking about before, which is like the laws are different over time and different places. What is illegal does not equate what is immoral. So I just want to remind everyone that crime doesn't equal immoral. It just means not legal. That's it. Like MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. was a criminal in that he was, you know, arrested multiple times and jailed for doing illegal things. But I don't think people would like to think that he's a criminal because they assign such a moral weight to the word. And I see us doing this when we say, oh, it should be, this is a crime or this is criminal. And I'm personally trying to cut that out because I think it's kind of like perpetuating that idea.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Well, of course, you should treat the state as the arbiter of morality. 100%.
Right. But it's like, you know, it's just so much in our environment. This keeps like telling us that same message over and over again. It gets confusing. So I point it out.
Definitely. Yeah. So I think that we should much earlier than we usually do open up for questions from chat, because I think that intelligent questions is going to be the best way to have this conversation. And I'm not sure how intelligent us hosts can be. I mean, you watch for our pretty faces, not for our brains.
Says you're dead smart and pretty.
I am going to take a little 5-minute breather.
Okay.
And I will be right.
Okie dokie. So in chat, if you think of any questions to ask Tia when she gets back, that would be really, really cool. And well, unfortunately, I was going to put this question. I actually was going to bring something to her, but maybe we can talk about it a little bit first. Nicole, I talked to you the other day about the 14 Eyes Agreement. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something I'm not sure people often
Which
don't.
Blew my mind, by the way. I didn't know. I had no idea.
Horrible. You're aware of this, yeah?
What?
The 14 Eyes Agreement?
14 eyes?
Yeah.
Don't laugh at me, Nicole. I'm very smart. The 14 eyes.
What?
What are you on about?
So this is that when we're talking about surveillance, when we're talking about state surveillance, it's actually important to know that your own government is not the one surveilling you. It's actually illegal to surveil, to just surveil citizens of your own country. Unless, and I mean, Tia already commented on this, but obviously organizations like the one that she worked for, like, will surveil people who are like marked out as troublemakers. But by using agreements between governments, basically they've gotten around that pesky little human rights abuse issue that you shouldn't just surveil your own civilians who haven't broken the law in any way. And so actually countries are spying on each other's citizens, just regular citizens.
Oh, that's right.
And then giving each other the data.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if Tia can comment on this when she gets back, because obviously she worked directly in that apparatus.
Oh, it's like, okay, I'm getting it now. It's like a legal loophole. It says here, Britain's GCHQ intelligence agency can spy on anyone except for British nationals.
Yes.
And the NSA can conduct surveillance on anyone but Americans.
Yes.
Don't know about that. But obviously, well, whatever.
Yeah,
but Yeah, I'm not sure about the validity of that. But yeah, I mean, it would make sense if they have human rights laws in their countries. It's like, oh, well, how do we get around that? Or we just spy on your people for you and tell you what they're doing. And then that's not reaching international law.
It's the truest form of unity, in my opinion, as a Biden supporter.
If anyone's watched any cop media ever, you know that human rights are a big frustration and annoyance to law enforcement.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Stairs and Patriot Act. Yeah, the Patriot Act from 2002? I don't know. It was way long ago.
So Tia, you're back, and I wanted to ask about the 14 Eyes Agreement and what you have to say about it. Spying on one another's citizens and then giving the data on them to the country that the people live in.
Oh, I think you're
muted.
Is that it?
Yeah. You got it. Yeah.
Awesome. Excellent. Hello. Hi, everybody. I mean, it was already kind of a thing, you can actually just look back and see just the sheer amount of the sort of roundabout thing that's been going on, and there are certain legal precedents and standards and treaties and whatnot that that exist at each stage going out from the original United States and UK alliance about intel during the Second World War. But the big thing is that that it is the analogy that I like to use is Portland 2020, the George Floyd uprising in full swing. The Portland City PD has to get help from the county and the state and the corrections of the state and of the National Guard, and they start running out of the munitions and start having to use expired ones and start running out of those, and etc., and getting and calling in help from neighboring states, right? That to me is what we're seeing with this 14 Eyes thing that you're talking about, rather than an attempt to circumvent the law more than they already do, right? They're like the very tiny amount of benefit they get from expanding it even slightly further is basically only going to be seen by the countries that sign on to the already existing agreement, and the countries are already in it. So that's my take on that.
I was saying while you were away, and I just want to clarify on this, because you were talking about in the system that you worked in, people keeping an eye on people who are marked as troublemakers or marked as a threat, a potential danger, right? But this is applying to just everybody, just anybody who they want to keep tabs on at all, or
it's about the way that they do collections and the legal authorities and whatever that they do that, as opposed to analysis, which is the stuff that I'm an expert on. So that the big difference is who's actually taking part in it.
So we're running into a not your department issue.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. You were looking at all people's nudes from the cloud. You weren't the one getting them.
Yes.
So, have we had any? Oh, actually, I'm seeing a question right away. So, Rinky Dink in chat says, question for Tia. Curious as to her thoughts about data protection legislation with regards to OpSec. The UK and EU have, on the face of it, more rights and frameworks for individuals to get information about how their data is processed than, say, USA. But obviously, legislation is still fundamentally written written to empower and enable surveillance. Not that specific a question, more curious for thoughts on the topic from someone who knows their stuff.
I'm going to, instead of like dipping into my firsthand experience, dip into the well of history, because the Freedom of Information Act in the United States of America was written and passed so that people would stop raiding offices where secret information was kept and releasing it to the public. And so by giving you this the path to see if your information is being used and how it's being used and whatever, and then when you actually get the document back, it's a bunch of like shorthands, jargons, 3-letter acronyms, etc. It's just like, okay, this doesn't mean anything to me, or maybe it does mean something to me, and I have to explain what all of this means to somebody else, and I look like a crazy person. And, that sort of thing where it's just meant to waste your time and control you, when realistically the problem is that they have the capability to do it at all. Right. That's the moral issue on hand. So.
Right. I guess I'm curious, like, I guess I am curious about whether it's worth conceptualizing any limits to state power or not, because obviously, like, the state is just monumentally powerful. Like, it is just an absurdly powerful thing, especially compared to any person, especially compared to any organization, even multinational corporations around the world. The state has so much more power, especially in through alliances with other states. But I am curious about, like, in your experience, whether there are kind of exploits the other way around. Like, are there weaknesses to the kind of existing surveillance system from your point of view?
The way that the surveillance system works is basically that, things get bulk collected, and then the people who do the analysis try to figure out what's related to the things that they're told to care about, and then basically track the stuff that's already related. And so everyone's data is getting collected, and some of it is getting saved and processed. Okay. And so, in my opinion, because of the way that the OODA loop, the one of the decision making sort of schemes that the Navy use, that the Navy teaches, is like,
let's unpack that for a sec. Yeah, because I've talked about it before on my streams, but I don't think we've talked about it on here.
Oh yeah, let's
Well, so I've heard it as OODA, like 3 letters, but it sounds like you're saying 4 letters. OODA.
Yeah, OODA.
Okay. And the one I know is observe, decide, act. So what's the extra O?
Orient, which is like observe and orient is kind of the same thing, really, but you can also break it down further, because you can disorient someone, so they're still making observations, but they can't connect it to something else.
That's a good point. That's interesting.
And so a lot of what we're talking about is
sorry, wait, no, we actually didn't unpack it properly. I feel like we're going over even Nicole and Mule's heads right now. Yeah. So the OODA loop is basically a tactical analysis. It's something you can apply. You could apply to like a fist fight you're in, and to a war. Like, it's something that where across conflict you can see that there is actually a set of things that. So if you are in conflict with another party, each of you is going through a process of observing the other, orienting yourself, like applying the information that you've observed to the real world, deciding what to do about it, and then acting on it. And those steps are where you can stop your enemy. So basically, if you can stop them from observing you, if you can stop them from orienting themselves, if you can stop them from deciding, and if you can stop them from acting. Those are the 4 opportunities to, if you think about it, everything falls into those categories, basically.
Yeah. In my opinion, their power, the state's power to observe, cannot be like over assumed, because they have, considering that everybody uses money and the state is the creator of currency, they functionally have infinite money to spend on to throw at whatever problem they have. So they will always have the manpower, they will always have the technology to do the observation with, whether that's, sending somebody to Uzbekistan in 1984 to listen in to Soviet fucking miner chatter, or whatever, that's, they're going to be able to do it. And so, we talk about ways to frustrate it and to split it up so that their ability to observe is not as good, whether we're trying to put ourselves behind encryption or trying to, take ourselves away from places where we know that they can observe, or to break it up so that we're never talking in any one place where it's easy for them to observe and put it together.
I suppose if we're talking about wasting their time, that would fall into the Orient thing, right?
Exactly,
it would be like, if you know you're just going to be observed and there's nothing you can do about it, but you can make it so that what they're observing matters yesterday, right?
Yes.
You can make it so that they have wasted time in getting that information, and so you're already acting, right?
Yes. And so, finding ways to speak in code, finding, spreading out between different languages so that it's harder to handle it, and as best as possible using multiple languages in the same chats and discussions, and as I said, splitting stuff up so that it's not as easy for them to put together the actual conversation that's happening because it's in different locations and some of it's in person, and etc. Things like this is what's going to make it harder for them to actually figure out what all of the information that's being given to them means.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've become a speedrunning streamer now. So that no one...
about going fast.
Wow.
Yeah,
way to tie that in.
No one thinks... No one's...
Popbug in chat says, what does OpSec stand for? I know what it means, but what is it actually short for? It is short for operational security, and InfoSec is information security.
It's funny when you're talking about the different languages. It reminds me of when I was a kid and we would come up with those like silly languages so we could like talk to each other and tell each other about how the teacher
Latin
looks
and stuff.
Yeah, like Adagar Tidiki Chukur it is very Litigi would be like, our teacher is very ugly. It's double talk, and then there's Pig Latin, and it's like, all right. So we were like onto something though. Like we were trying to keep our conversation coded from our authority figure that has the monopoly on detentions and shit. So we were like, actually, pretty much.
If you and your friend invented an entire language which you didn't document anywhere how it works, and only you and your friend understand it, you and your friend have total privacy. You could organize anything you wanted, and no one would actually be able to understand.
Unless they have some cryptographer, some sort of like,
Yeah, no, that is true. There's still cryptography.
Language is on a different level as cryptography, because the reason why it didn't matter that the Japanese, like us, were able to break the codes back and forth and whatever, because on a tactical level, the Navajo code talkers literally won the Pacific War for us for the Marines. Like, wow. Because we were able to have Japanese people, like people who spoke Japanese as first or in home language, like listening in and being like, okay, they're over this hill, they're planning on storming, so we just point the guns and shoot the guns, whatever. And then they would get our comms and they're like, it's in gibberish, thanks. Like,
right, okay, because they were expecting English, okay, right.
And they get Navajo, yeah.
Right, that's really interesting. So just to make sure that we have a conclusion on the question I was asking before, you said it cannot be overestimated, like the state's ability to observe.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are multiple states on this planet that have the ability to cause complete extinction of all life on Earth.
Yes.
To think that they could just, they were listening to each other's telegraphs, they were listening to each other's phone calls, they were watching each other's private telephone lines that they were able to do with telephone calls that they were, what are they called? VTC, virtual teleconferences, that shit, like,
right.
And all sorts of shit, and the fire hose and breaking your stuff up are the two ways that really get in the way of actually evaluating what the information that you're given is. So if you can't get the whole picture, that's difficult. And then if you're given so much that you can't figure out even what matters, those are the only two like effective.
Right. Okay. So I imagine to some degree that the latter would be something that was likely in play in the lead up to January 6th. Like, people were talking so much, right? Like, across these platforms that it would be hard to tell, because I know a lot of cult researchers and anti-fascist researchers. We're actually gonna have a cult researcher on in a couple of weeks, and a lot of people were just like, they're planning something's coming, and trying to tell people ahead of January 6th that something was coming, but they didn't quite know what it was going to be, and there was a lot of anxiety in that community because, yeah, they knew that something pretty bad was gonna happen.
Everyone was talking about it, but like there wasn't enough people talking about it like concretely enough. It's like the final like that's the apotheosis of stochasticism is what happened there.
Yeah, right. Okay. Can you unpack that for for people who don't have you and I our love of incredibly obscure language?
Apotheosis, the ultimate divine power. So like it raises itself to its most powerful and explicit form. Like I don't think we could reasonably expect something like the stochastic rhetoric that has inspired so many mass shooters and violence to do something more effective, mobilize more people than we saw on January 6th, or in a more like organized, like it's always going to be disorganized. It's always going to tend toward fewer people. And so what we saw was the maximum level that the stochastic rhetoric can do for a large group. Just a huge disorganized mass who doesn't even know what they're doing or why they're there.
Yeah, the January 6th lot were not a group who are going in. Yeah, so that's actually a really important point. And chat are asking what stochastic means. So stochastic is about is commonly applied to is most often heard in the phrase stochastic terrorism, where as opposed to say ISIS, who typically are training in cells and have an organizational structure, and then are like planning attacks, and then all of the conversation about information that we've been having applies to that structure, right? What makes stochastic terror all the more deadly, by contrast, is that you just have someone who is spouting rhetoric that encourages anyone to act. Please do something. And this is obviously what Trump was doing the whole entire time, and all of the Trump ripoffs and all of the people in Trump's orbit were all saying like, these satanic pedophile cabal Democrats are blah blah blah, and we have to stop them. And so people would decide on their own to act, and you can't intercept or observe. You can't see what the planning is if it's just one person who's just planning it all in their head.
Well, there's that really famous, not famous, but I guess famous if you're like an uber online political nerd. Like there's that post where it's a video of one of Charlie Kirk's followers, fans, whatever you want to call it, supporters, and he's going, when do we just get the guns and start killing people? And Charlie Kirk is like, no, never said that, did I? And that's the benefit of having these sort of like really, like you say, like just very vague, like we need to do something now, we need to act now by any means necessary, etc., because it's just very vague, and people are going to take it how they want. And obviously that guy probably took it how Charlie Kirk maybe might have wanted it to happen.
But you can't prove in a court of law that Charlie Kirk was trying to get people to act that way.
Right.
And there's the rub. Right. I'm still trying to unpack what my very smart friend has said for my wonderful friends who are smart in their own way. What you mean by the stochastic apotheosis is that stochastic terror, right? You have someone who's talking and they're encouraging people to do something, and then people just do it, and there isn't this planning that can be intercepted and therefore stopped, which is very scary. And in the case of January 6th, loads of people were talking, and they were talking very seriously about doing something. And because of, like you say, that's fire hosing. There's this enormous wealth of information, and you can't actually tell what the serious plan is. And then on the day, it's like some people have gotten together and decided to do this, and they told their friends like IRL or in a phone call or in a text without explicitly saying we're planning to storm the Capitol kind of thing. And so people just came to this event, and then the event turned into this thing. And so what you're saying is, while there's been a lot of focus on stochastic terror and I've just been explaining what's scary about it just now, like the ultimate form, the kind of worst case scenario for what it could be, looks like January 6th. Whereas something like Patriot Prayer, who, you know, march in lockstep and wear a uniform and clearly are organizing together, they could do something a lot more serious because they're organizing.
And what do you call that kind of terror? Is it organized? Like, what's the word for that? Organized terror? Okay.
Yeah, stochastic in this case just means random. It's from the Greek root that means random.
Okay.
And when I say that it's the ultimate form, I mean the ultimate form of as organized as something like stochastic terror can provide. Whereas, you know, the most common form we see where it comes out is, you know, one person doing, you know, lifetimes of damage all, you know, in an afternoon in a 5-minute period.
Yes.
And so when I say it's the ultimate form, I mean that, you know, that the people that we have to watch out for are the people who are actively organizing and actively trying to put something together, whether they're already in power or whether they're trying to get into power, and not people who are just like, well, somebody has to do something about it, because as we generally know, the bystander effect means that somebody might do something about it, but just as often nobody does. Well, eventually, and so those individual acts which heighten the you know, the escalation of tensions, which leads to an increased police presence, and which is already what the right wing wants, because once the right wing controls the government, the police, which have been given more money and resources to deal with their terror threat, well, now they're in control of the police, and well,
exactly.
Do you think
very cool? What a wonderful future America has.
So just to be clear, you're saying that we should pay attention to the organized terror, for instance, and not so much at the stochastic terror? Or am I misunderstanding you?
You cannot like predict or protect yourself from stochastic terror. It's like a lightning strike, basically.
If a guy who has been watching way too much Ben Shapiro, Nicole, while you're at Whole Foods, a guy who's been watching loads of Ben Shapiro shows up with a gun, there is nothing that could have been done up to that point, because that guy wasn't posting anywhere that he was planning it. He wasn't telling friends, let's do this. There was no way to intercept it and stop it. And it's just happening now, right?
Wouldn't you say that I mean, there is a source of the, like, if he's a Ben Shapiro fan, then wouldn't that be the way that we stop it? And couldn't you think of Ben Shapiro as like the ringleader of an organized?
That would imply that the people who are surveilling us would want to surveil Ben Shapiro fans. You know, it's almost like they don't give a fuck about people like that. Do you know what I mean?
I'm trying to relate this to, like, maybe because a lot of us can view, like, you know, January 6th, for instance. But so we're working off of these events, but I'm trying to think of more, if we can boil these things down to maybe like internet interactions, where it's just so people can have like a more tangible grasp on it, because I think there are some maybe parallels with the way that, say, harassment campaigns work, like something like Gamergate. Is that stochastic? Or
in a sense, yes, because they had the forum where they were telling people, Ian Danskin covered this in that video about Gamergate, right? In the presentation he gave to the university students, like they had the forum where they were encouraging everybody to get as frustrated as possible, and then they weren't telling them what to do. But then they had
examples of but what you could
there's
do.
a thing, right? Like there was a mix, and there's often a mix when it's this kind of big movement of hate, right? So there were people who were just seeing all the media and consuming all the media that made them frustrated, and would just turn around and go and harass someone. But there were other people who were in more private channels organizing Gamergate as a harassment campaign.
Yeah, like in Discord channels. I mean, we get harassers here that like, they're like, they'll sometimes just tell us, oh, we all plan to come in here in our Discord, and it's okay. So you're making plans, you're talking about these plans. And then others are just part of toxic communities that they don't say. In fact, they might go out of their way. Like you said, the Charlie Kirk example, they might say, no, don't do that. But it's like, that's what we know they do. That's their function. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm kind of getting a better grasp of this. Chad, do you feel a little bit better about these terms? Because I've heard the term stochastic a lot, and I even said it, but I don't think I've ever truly understood what it was. So this is
I knew what apotheosis was. I knew what apotheosis was because I play a game called Slay the Spire, and there's a card in that called apotheosis, and it basically means when you get dead sick, like you get absolutely chatted.
Right.
But I didn't know what stochastic means. There's a couple of people who I don't think are getting the same meaning from it as what you're saying here. Some people are saying things like, oh, there's like an element of probability to it or something. But I guess like there's an element.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really important, and I'm sure that anyone who's like paid attention can speak to this, is that like very often it turns out that the cops did receive a tip. Hey, like this guy is talking about like coming in and killing everyone, and then the cops didn't do anything because the cops don't actually give a shit, and the cops don't have an interest in stopping it. The more it happens, the more their budget goes up, so they actually don't give a shit. And so when and so there that example that we gave, that the person didn't say anything to their friends or their family or text about it or write it down in their calendar or anything, and no way to intercept it or to figure it out, and they just did it randomly. Like that's the rarest case, and realistically there are interventions which will prevent this, but if somebody in your community is like listening to these people who are associated with stochastic terrorism, like Ben Shapiro and the whole rightosphere, and they're in your life, you might want to talk to them about that. Like, I mean, this is kind of off the OpSec front, but like that's something that's pretty fucking bad, and that community is the thing that is the thing that will most radicalize people toward wanting to protect their community. And so that isn't everybody's job, and not something everybody can do, but
based. But like I say, like I've learned what stochastic means today. Buzzing. I was gonna say something about so like for an example, because obviously like this is a lot for me to take in. I've taken so many notes, and I am trying to put it to like a real world example. So I remember the first time I heard about this kind of stuff was like in the George Floyd uprising last year, right? Not last year, 2 years ago. Holy shit!
Who even knows what time it is anymore? Okay,
so
the before time.
The before times. People were talking about, oh my God, what are people doing? People are using this hashtag, and people need the hashtag on Twitter in order to get information about the protests, right? But then, like, so for me, I guess what I'm not understanding is, like, if people are trying to get information about the protests from Twitter, isn't that, like, against OpSec? That's against InfoSec.
Well,
but it depends on what information, I guess.
The way that these practices were designed was with an understanding of secrecy and security as something that you do to protect your assets, whether they're like conceptual assets like your secrets or actual physical assets, right? And so the OpSec and InfoSec are trying to protect something that is secret, and something that is then defined as something whose disclosure would damage the United States' ability to protect itself or its strategic interests, right? And so when we're talking about the things like, well, should somebody be able to post what they're doing on Twitter, or like, hey, we're having a protest, come join us on Facebook? Well, most protests are legal, and they don't require you to protect your identity or to protect everything.
Not in Britain.
Or that is, they can be, governments can choose to make them illegal, but a protest is simply like the act of demanding a redress for wrongs. That's the simplest thing. And the simplest goddamn thing that you can ask your government is, hey, undo the way you fucked me up, and so when we don't have anything to hide, finding out that I'm going to protest because I don't think the police should be killing someone is not some what's the grossest secret that I have to hide. Exactly. And so with the ability to do infiltration and surveillance and co-opt people and etc., and all of the violence that the state has in play, there are levels where like transparency and communication are more important than secrecy. And the counteracting is how involved are you? How important do you think it would be for the state to do violence to you individually? And all these things, you're doing these running tallies of who's so important, who's so integral that we, that I don't want to endanger them by putting information about them on the internet. Because remember, you can make the decision about endangering yourself, but you should not be making the decision about endangering somebody else. And so a lot of these practices are going to be something that you want to do to protect your comrades as well, especially.
I have an example that might help to unpick this and explain it a little bit better, which is an example of a failure of OpSec that somebody told me about. So they are involved with renters unions, and they were arranging, I might get some of these details wrong, but we can still use it to pick it apart. They were arranging an eviction resistance, and so people needed to come to a place to resist against the bailiffs evicting somebody. And what they did was put out across social media through WhatsApp group chats basically a flyer saying like eviction resistance, this date, this time, and the address, right? And the reason that's an OpSec failure, right? Contrasting against what we were just talking about, like in both cases, you want to share. We're basically doing a protest. We're doing a place where people gather together and say no to something, and so using social media is completely fine. But if you are sharing the address of the person who you're trying to stop from getting evicted, that is a piece of information that you want to keep secure and secret, right? So that's one that you would only give to people who have then said, yes, I'd like to come to that protest, or yes, I'd like to come to that eviction resistance. It's an issue from two angles, right? So one is a more general security, which is just like, if you're just announcing to the world, we're doing this thing at this place. If there's someone, I mean, this is less true with like a renters union, but if you were trying to help out like people in a homeless camp, like far right groups do terrorize homeless camps constantly, right? So if you were doing that, then you'd be making the information available to fascists who that would make your event unsafe. But if it's in the case of, but the other side is a tactical one, which would be that if the landlord knows that their tenants got the renters union involved, and then they're watching your socials, and then they see you post, we're doing an eviction resistance this time and date at this address, and they're like, oh, that's an address of the property that we manage, so therefore like we know that eviction resistance will be there, and we'll just do the eviction on a different day. See, so that's like where they did need to use social media to get out information that you do want to share, but they shouldn't be sharing all the information, because some of it was information that should be protected.
Yeah, it's like when you said before about like making sure no one involved knows too much. That's how that relates to that, right?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of please go ahead.
Okay, so the big thing is that, like, with the ability to, like, if any one person becomes so integral to the operation that losing them means that the operation falls apart, that person is going to be lost. That's what the strategy of the local, state, and federal authorities in the United States has been since the 60s, and it has been incredibly effective at suppressing political movements in the United States. And so if somebody is putting everything onto their own back, or if somebody is so useful, so over the top good at all of these things, like you need to talk to them about how useful they're becoming, because they're painting a target on their face.
Yes, we should use another big word and then unpack it. This is why organizing needs to be acephalous. So acephalous means without a head, right? So if it, exactly as Tira is saying, if there's anyone who is too important, then they're going to be the one that is targeted by all that stuff. And actually, in the organizing interview that I did with Emmy, she highlighted something really important, which is kind of the contrast to this. A lot of organizations suffer from what she called the tyranny of formlessness, where everyone assumes, like, we should all be able to do all the things, and we should all do a bit of the thing just based on who is available when, rather than taking specific roles and doing specific things and playing to your strengths. And it's still important to play to your strengths. So I just want to get this message across in a balanced way. It's important to, within an organization, play to your strengths. Emmy gave the example that she's very, fast on her feet in terms of thinking of things to do and ways to act, and she's also very funny. So she does the social media and press stuff for their organization, and so you should still play to your strengths with and know what people are good at, but also if one person's just good at loads and loads of stuff, don't just put all of the responsibility onto them, because then you're just reaching a point where they could just be removed and then your organization can't do anything.
Which is why we encourage y'all to copy our format and do it better than us, please.
It is, on a larger scale. In the media ecosphere, we don't want to be the only ones talking this way and educating people how to organize, because then we could be removed. If our agent watching now decided that we were an issue.
Yeah, I mean, if there was ever some sort of train of thought. Got it. We're here. Got him. So if it ever turned out that the terms of service shifted and things like YouTube and Twitch and everything got just changed their mind and now advocating for any sort of radical change to the governing system is now against the terms of service, and those things can be deleted and your accounts can be removed for them, strikes, etc. Then because it's not a legal thing, it's a terms of service thing, right? So if that's the case, then we then every single person who is doing that is liable to lose their account, is liable to lose their streams, their backups, their uploads, etc. And so it's important that as many people are talking about these things in as many ways as possible as well, so that if there are ways to talk about these things in ways that are more palatable to people and etc. and less specific ways. I don't know. I feel like that's important to talk about as well.
Oh, 100%. I agree.
I think that we could start thinking about terms of service and maybe work outwards from this to a more general picture, because terms of service don't just get enforced by mods. Twitch is too big of a platform, of a website to have paid mods who work for Twitch who are doing all the stuff. And so instead it uses a user moderation model. This is some of the stuff I'm going to be writing about in Cyberpunk 2022. But the moderation problem is something that has defined our modern platforms hugely, which is they grew too fast and too recklessly because of investor capital as a model, that they don't have good moderation at all, and it's just this kind of lawless space. And most platforms respond to this by deputizing users as cops, right? Getting people to go around and report stuff for them. You see, rather than it being you can additionally report something if you think mods have missed it, it's the default thing is that if there is any kind of issue, it's not going to get dealt with unless someone's reporting it. And what this results with on Twitch is that, again, in our hypothetical where Twitch says any kind of radical politics are banned, right? Accounts who don't have people hate watching them, reporting them for talking about radical politics won't get banned. And then expanding from that idea, right, we have a more broad idea, which is, I think, very important to our discussion about OpSec today, which is that crime only exists where the state can see it. So surveillance creates crime. And that's kind of an important thing. If people are organizing something that, as far as they're aware, is legal, or even at the time is legal, right? This is where I'm making a comparison between our reality and then our hypothetical where they change the terms of service. States can change the law, often shockingly radically and rapidly when it's a time of collapse and struggle. States can just bust out all sorts of authoritarian policies. And so you could be organizing something and it is perfectly legal, and then shit turns around really fast. And that's why, like, you should be, applying a certain level of security to everything that you're doing, no matter what. It is still about, like, thinking of the people who want to stop you as a tactical enemy in this.
And you have to definitely understand how much of the law is made after the fact of
yes.
The state, the city, the government sent the police in to do something that wasn't legal at the time, and either it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court and no, that was illegal, you can't do that, or it's close enough to what the de facto and de jure powers are that they're just like, no, this is important for them to have, and it's just one more of the many powers that are get granted to the police. And like the amount of harm that the police can do to our life and limb legally with no recourse is frankly incredible. And that's not even including all of the ways that they're allowed to violate our privacy, our safety, etc. Like with during a presumptive stop, they need very little to no excuse to do a stop, to pull you out of the vehicle and search your vehicle. And in fact, you asking to not have your vehicle searched is usually grounds for a judge to okay a vehicle search. And so like the worst you're doing is inconveniencing them. But if you don't, you should still inconvenience them as much as possible, even if you know that there's no way that on the current records, etc., like waste all of their time that you can, because all the time they're spending not being able to prosecute you while trying to is going to be time that they can't spend prosecuting someone else.
Absolutely. There's a few things I want to say, and we might be leading into a different conversation altogether, but this is all a conversation about the law. We're having a little bit of a philosophy of the law conversation here. Once again, the official position of Red Planet is that we don't endorse any crimes. We're not encouraging anybody to do anything illegal. We simply recognize that people are going to engage in some illegal activities, as the systems that are killing them are not stoppable through anything but illegal activity. But somebody put in chat, in response to me saying surveillance creates crime, they said it's only illegal if you get caught. And again, if we're talking about like kind of the philosophy of law and like where crime exists, it's a little like this OODA loop thing, right? It's like the state is something that is observing you, right? Orienting information that it's observed, deciding what to do about it, and then acting. If it's decided that you're a threat, right, what it's going to act and do is create a crime around, like if it's observing you and it puts a picture together, right, and then sees that what you're doing is completely legal under existing laws, but a threat to the state in a really meaningful way, the state will write laws on the spot to prosecute you. I mean, even to some degree, you could argue that like precedent-based law by definition is just making up crimes after the fact. But like, yeah, I think there are a few aspects that I think are really interesting to kind of philosophy of law. Like I point out that for Superman, there are no crimes, right? Like if you can't be physically subdued, you can never be arrested. And that's again what I'm saying about the OODA loop, right? Like the point of thinking about surveillance is that crime only exists where the state can see it. And then people have only committed crimes if the state can see that they did, that they're the ones doing it. That's the orient part, right? And then people can only be prosecuted if the state, has like a coherent internal mechanism of some degree to make decisions with. And then people can only be sent to prison if they can be physically subdued. These are all things to consider, I guess. Yeah. But where I said that we would probably go on to a different discussion is that someone asked a very big question. in the chat. So Tamaka Killingbird says, here's my question for Tia, if we can get to it before the end. Congrats, we are. We can assume you will never know every camera and microphone between you and your destination. Is there a way other than Grey Man clothes? Did we already talk about Grey Man?
Not
I didn't. I alluded to it.
Okay,
but...
we'll make a tangent for it then.
Yeah.
Is there a way other than Grey Man clothes to act while you know you are being observed without being controlled and limited by it, both practically not getting yourself or others caught, and psychologically not obeying their expectations? So I'll just add on to that. Grey Man is a tactic of dressing like the people around you, basically being the most inconspicuous, not by hiding but by blending in. A lot of people take it to mean a certain kind of look. It's not a certain kind of look. Don't try and look like Jason Bourne. You're trying to look like the people around you. If you're going to the goth club, right, look like a goth. Don't look like Jason Bourne. If you're going to a university campus, right, do dye your hair. Do have your pronoun pin. Don't dress like Jason Bourne. It's not a specific look. It is the most common look for wherever you are and the people who are around you. But yeah, this is a really interesting question, right? It's how do we act when we know we're being watched, which we are, without the knowledge of us being watched, allowing us to, without the knowledge of us being watched, controlling us and stopping us from being able to do anything meaningful.
I mean, that's that, you know, you've managed to live your life up until now being watched pretty much the whole time. So, you know, you don't have to worry about ducking every time you walk into a 7-Eleven, because you're not going to be doing something illegal in that 7-Eleven, right?
Yeah.
Even though you're on camera and you're right next to a ruler that'll say exactly how tall you are, right? So the what's important is that you know, you're keeping track of these identity and selection issues where that will make it easier for the cops to tell who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing those things, and connect it to the previous the beginning or what you've done before and what you do after, and create a narrative out of that, right? And so when you know, when the investigators come in and try to determine who is who, you know, every single camera that they have to go and you know, okay, well, you were in front of this storefront for 5 minutes. Now they have to go and see, you know, either to the next storefront, find the next camera, etc. You know, this is time of theirs that you're wasting. And the, you know, and so if you're not doing a crime, if what you're doing is not related to a crime, not related to a protest, don't even worry about it. Just you know, be you at the level of security that you've determined is okay for a normal day. And if you're going to a protest, like, you know, do the things that make you secure, like preparing for the protest, going to the protest, helping people out at the protest, and then coming home from the protest, and etc. And like, you know, don't be looking at other people and seeing how they're messed up, or like trying to kick somebody out of the protest, like, hey, like, you're, you know, whatever, you know, you're doing things wrong. Because one of the things that it comes down to is that, like, they are endangering themselves, they're skylining themselves.
Yeah.
And that's taking heat off of other people. You know, you can only have a gray man if there is an average. If every single person is in black, then it's going to be completely random who gets selected for violence, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was also the case fairly recently in one of the Portland street battles where on the Antifa side, someone was taking pictures, and then a whole bunch of people gave them shit and, like, I think took their phone off them. But in doing this, all of the other people started filming that person on their phones. And it's just like, see how this self-policing and, you know, policing of others can just lead to just a much worse outcome, really. I was saying this the other day on Nicole's stream where we were talking about surveillance, but I do think that it's really important for if the online left, right, as creators, if there's one thing that we keep coming back to, surveillance should really be it, because this question about how you act when you're being watched is a really fundamental one to what we're talking about, right? And we should, as people who by definition have eyes on us. I'm as in you, the audience, to be clear. I'm not just I don't just mean one special friend. I mean you, the audience, are watching us. We should talk openly and as often as possible about the behavior that it is okay to be observed doing, and the systems that observe us and what they do with that information. Because having that conversation publicly enables us to establish it's information theory stuff, right? Like, it establishes a common ground where we all know how much baseline information everybody, including maybe actors who are opposed to our efforts, have. We all know everyone has this information, and knowing that everyone has that information is information itself that we can use to make decisions based off of. I am gonna go pee.
Good job. Great job.
I was
right.
I'm going to read a comment from someone who's been saying all sorts of weird stuff, but one comment of theirs landed, and before they said the second part, which made it not land. But the first part is, well, as children, we are all used to pretending that we were being watched, or at least I think the comment is like, as children, we have to assume that we're being watched, I guess. Because it's true, because our parents are watching us, and then our Santa Claus is watching us, or or if you're raised religious,
literally has a camera in it.
Yeah, or that, exactly. And so I think we touched on this in the conversation that Sophie and I had on surveillance. And by the way, I put the link in the chat if anyone wants to see, because we've referenced it a few times. It was a really great conversation. It's on my YouTube, so it's in the chat right there. I'll post it again. But it's really interesting how we have been groomed from early on to be like ready to be surveilled at all times, and also to be suspicious of people who don't want to be surveilled at all times. Yeah. And it's kind of remarkable when you do think about it for a moment, of how much of our upbringing has been this like grooming, very panopticon shit. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so semi good comment from the chatter who then ruined it with the next one. But you know what? I still want to give him credit.
You saying that it starts in our children and all of this lets me be incredibly on brand, and I get to do it while Sophie is away. But David Graeber talks about this.
Oh no! Oh no! Another Graeber fan.
Based Graeber.
Honestly, Graeber is great. Sophie talks about him all the time. It's great.
My Twitter handle is still David Graeber Stan account. So yes.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
So the big thing is that, like, not just the panopticon and the assumption of surveillance, where you can never know that your boss isn't over your shoulder, or your superior officer, or a cop, or whatever, right? But full on that our ability to like conceptualize boundaries and consent and autonomy are messed with this exact same parental model, like Engels talks about as well, that it's all based on, like, in the white Western model, that it's all based on the relationship that parents have to children, or that adults have to children under their care at all, and that it every time that you had homework and you did the homework, that's unpaid overtime or work that you're taking home, right? So that exact sort of example, but for basically every overreach that authority does against us. But go ahead.
Don't be telling our chat that homework is unpaid overtime.
It is,
because
to be fair, they're unpaid interns already. So
yeah, no,
That's
actually,
right.
they're not even unpaid. They pay me. So they pay me as money for a subscription, and now they're doing labor. So I really, y'all are
and yet
a bunch
you
of
call
dummies.
yourself a communist. Jeez. Oh,
I know, that's like, it's hilarious. The script is hilarious. Great. What you're saying reminds me of, and I wish Tim was here to speak to the like, at least like his indigenous perspective on it, because I wonder what the indigenous I mean, obviously it's not the indigenous, but there are some commonalities amongst indigenous people, like in their culture, and I want to know, like, and have an indigenous perspective on surveillance as it applies to their culture. Like, what does that look like? Is there surveillance at all? Like, it's really hard for me it's really hard for me to imagine a society that isn't like always suspicious and like, you know, it's hard for me to imagine any other type of society. And I don't mean that in like a way that's trying to say that it's impossible. I'm saying that because I think I'm just so extremely completely pilled in a really bad way that like when I was growing up, my mom was very big on surveying me, I guess. She like took the door off my room to always keep an eye on me. We had like one phone that was like, you know, it was a landline, so you can always just sit there and listen to conversations. Like there was a lot of stuff. And I remember seeing this video on Twitter where it was, I don't know, it got kind of wrecked by like people like shitting on it, but it was this police state like precinct Twitter, and they were showing how you can search your child's room, and like a way to like, I don't know if any of you all caught that like a few months ago, but it was this cop just showing how to properly search your child's room, and he's like, first you do this and you do that, and it was so many parents were like, oh, thank you so much, and the rest of us were like, what the hell is your problem? But it's so gross how it's like so many of us, that's the type of environments we were raised in, and we were never given any other we could never think anything otherwise, because if we were like, hey, we don't like this, then it's, well, what do you have to hide?
When I was a kid, I was so naughty at school, just for no reason really. I think it's probably because I just
stole a lot was all.
Yeah. I did a bunch of terrible things. I flushed like a kid's Game Boy Advance down the toilet for no reason. Yeah. I was a real piece of shit.
Absolutely criminal.
I feel like it's because of ADHD or whatever. But I had to like, don't laugh at that in the chat. It's not funny. That's a terrible thing to do.
We call it ODD when you're being vindictive about it.
Right. Exactly. But it's yeah. So. They couldn't fucking control me at school, which is just really embarrassing. So they had to make my mom come in on breaks to like watch me, basically. So that's like a whole other fucking thing as well. It's crazy, like
the origin story.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it related to what Bunny was on about, because it is we just get like absolutely surveilled to fuck from the moment that we're born. And, you know, for me, yeah, fair enough. I did do a lot of naughty shit, but that's like another failure of the state. I think it's because I had undiagnosed ADHD. You know, I was going through like a move from like my childhood home to like another city and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't, you know, again, like sort of failure to look at these things that are like affecting a kid in that way. And they're just like, no, instead, just like watch what he's doing all the time. Never take your eyes off him. You know, yeah, I was a bit naughty in it.
I mean, this is exactly what a state whose entire way of life and system requires people to be doing busy work all the time, how they will respond to this kind of thing, because they've necessarily given the teacher, like, you know, the teacher isn't enough on their own to monitor all these kids and take care of all these kids. And so one kid is acting up, so they need to dedicate someone else's time and man hours, right? Rather than in a society where people are available to like take care of kids in a, you know, in any kind of reasonable way. If we I don't want to, you know, be for whitos sitting around talking about indigenous issues, but to talk about that issue of, you know, in indigenous societies, like Graeber also talks a lot about indigenous societies, so everyone can drink again. I'm in the Tyr and I are both in the Graeber cult, but you know, there's one account from I think it's Dutch settlers in America from very early on in colonization that Graeber talks about in The Dawn of Everything, where at one point the Native Americans are described with the phrase, "No one is of more consequence than anybody else." And in more detail, they say that the chief is a role that exists, but the chief can't make people do things unless he convinces them it's a good idea. Like, nobody's going to do it unless they agree it's a good idea to do it. And you know, it's like that, right? Like the differences in societies. Like if you're in a society, if you live in a society, you know, what does that mean? It means that like when you are told to act ways that are apparently the laws either literal legal judicial system laws of your society, or they're the sort of social norms, then you're going to do it because you know that there's going to be someone kind of backing up that. Like, not acting that way leads to someone eventually doing something to you, basically. Whereas if you live in a kind of society where no one is of more consequence than anybody else, when you got the whito off the boat coming and saying you have to pay taxes to the king or something, and you're like, I don't know what any of those words are and I don't care, plus L plus your white ratio, get out of my country, then you hopefully have enough people backing you up who are your family, your community. So I guess it's an interesting thing, and this is exactly, like I say, not looking to be for white people getting into indigenous discourse too much, but this is what I mean about like online leftist content creators highlighting the behavior that is acceptable while being watched and pushing it, because there is behavior that is legal, but when you're being observed, people avoid doing it. There is behavior that people feel is morally right, but they won't do it, and part of that has to do with being observed, right? And I think that we can push those, we can push things in a direction which will allow other people who are not us to engage in serious organizing. And again, this is why I have been bringing up Mastodon, because if people are in a big space altogether, even if that space is being generally surveilled by the state, but it's a space that has an overwhelming political skew, and it's a community, and we're all in community with one another, as opposed to Twitter where everyone's acting like cops to each other all the time, then you're existing within a bubble of left culture, which I think is cool. That would be neat, and it would do the thing I'm talking about pushing what's the acceptable behavior to do while you're being watched, basically.
I've got two things that I want to say. Remember that the acceptable behavior while you're being watched might radically change based off of who is doing the watching and who is getting watched.
Yeah.
Because no amount of legal observers showing up to protests to make sure that cops aren't doing violence, illegal violence, has stopped cops from doing illegal violence.
Yes.
And speaking of legal observers, try to actually reach out to some in your local area, or the programs, or the people in other areas who can help you start your own program, because you don't have to be a lawyer or anything to do it. You just have to go through the training and know what you're doing, etc. It's very and it's very good information to help people know their rights, to help and all of that. And then the second one is, to get back to the other point that I was making about the observation, is a lot of this is not just to protect yourself, but to protect the people around you. So if you think that it's okay and safe enough for you to do, you really shouldn't be making that choice for other people. I really
no, that is true. That is true. Yeah. But that's what I mean about a space that does that pushing.
Yes.
Rather than individuals who are trying to do that pushing, because actually you're exactly right that if I were to start going, I'm going to do this thing and this thing and this thing to show that it's okay to do those things, people who are watching me can't necessarily do those things. A really good example of this actually would be Ai Weiwei, who has been a big focus of the authoritarian surveillance state of China. Like a lot of his work has been to do with government interference in people's lives, and the state has persecuted him a bunch of times, but at the same time, Zizek comments on this, right? Upholding someone who's being persecuted shows what they're essentially showing as an acceptable way to be. Like, they're still using him at the same time that he is getting away with stuff or whatever. They're still using him to show their citizens, he did those things and we chucked him in jail, but because we're telling you about those things, I don't know if Ai Weiwei has ever been to jail, but he's certainly been scrutinized a hell of a lot, and because we're telling you that those things exist at all, then you're you're aware that you could do those things. And I think Zizek compares this to boys will be boys, right? It's like talking about horrible things that men do in relation to young boys isn't telling them don't do those things. It's telling them those are things you could do. You know, so like a good example of this would be that realizing that you're actually not a boy but a girl, and then transing your gender isn't a thing that young boys are told that they could do, whether it's assigned good or bad, right? It isn't a thing that they're told that they could do. And so loads and loads of people struggle to do that entirely life-affirming and necessary thing. By contrast, loads and loads of young boys are told that like men are violent and that this is a bad thing. Don't do it, but it's still being told to them. And so that's, you know, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about with this kind of information theory, like what is actually being said, whether it's being said and condemned or not, it's still being said.
Kind of reminds me of like mass shooters. Even if they are arrested or if they, however it's resolved, there will be probably copycats, or, you know, there's a risk of copycats because the idea is out there, even if it's like it's already been publicized to such an extent that now like the idea is in someone's brain. I know there's it's a lot more to it than that, but like I think there's probably an element of it.
Show or name mass shooters, because it's not just about idolization, right? Like they are still trying to, like, while acknowledging that something did happen, the press are trying to limit how much they talk about something. It was very interesting, for example, to see Bernie Sanders be completely ignored for several significant periods of campaign, because it was like the press made such a big deal about Trump gaining popularity and then winning, and everyone was screaming at them the whole time, just don't report on the guy. Just don't report on every tweet he makes, everything he says, every scandal he's involved with, because you're giving him more attention. And then when Bernie Sanders was saying we should have Medicare for all, we should make these non-reformist reforms, we should change the system, suddenly the press goes quiet. And that's a very interesting thing, right? It shows that they actually are aware of the game that they're playing and are completely capable of coordinating in that game to talk about or not talk about something when they want to, when it actually, you know, when it's actually challenging to them. But I have a probably final topic for us to talk about, which is I don't know, would it be fair to call this counter surveillance? So several people I know are involved with cop watch networks, and again, this is going to be something that's super jurisdiction local stuff to talk about, but like if we're going to talk about surveillance, one thing to talk about is, I know we kind of wandered off from OpSec and onto surveillance, and they're not quite the same topic, but they're close. But I'm interested in the notion of people basically seeing what cops are up to, seeing where the state is. Like we have to consider as well our own OODA loop, right? And we have to consider that we should be observing like them and seeing what they're up to. Tia, do you have thoughts on cop watch stuff? I don't know if it has different names, or if you've heard of it before. In the UK, it certainly is called cop watch networks.
I do not have any insights onto their operations, but like I think that it's generally like a necessary thing. Like even if I believed that the police were in some way good or whatever, I would still think that and you know, external oversight body which you know keeps track of and publicizes their behavior patterns would be a good thing. So like in all cases, I think that it's necessary. Like,
right, exactly. If it was illegal to watch the cops and report on what they're doing and where they are and so on, you're necessarily like, you know, admitting that you are that you as the state are completely unaccountable to the people.
Yes.
Yeah, and so this is why I say check your local jurisdiction, but it is a really interesting thing to consider. That again, what should be hopefully is for everybody a completely legal activity, right? To monitor the police and see where they are and where they're at and what's going on with them.
Record their behavior when they're physically near you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't we also have ability to like listen to the radio or whatever? Like I know there's
do that.
I know that's like, at least in Seattle, I think I got an app and it was just like very easy to like listen to what the cops say. I'm not really sure how comprehensive that is. Like, is it all their conversation or is it like official? Like, I don't know. I have no idea.
Well, so this would be a good example of their OpSec, wouldn't it? Right? If you're listening to the completely accessible wavelength on which cops broadcast their coordination stuff, right? You're hearing them firstly speak in code, right? Most cops use signals.
That's a 399er,
right?
Like
which you have to learn in order to understand. So we already covered that. Then there's what information is going out, and when, and that's something that will be considered and coordinated by the department, right? And it's, I mean, to some degree, maybe you could learn, maybe you could learn something from that. I don't. Again, I'm not. I don't have nearly as much experience as Tia does, so like, I don't want to talk out of my ass, but like, it still is an example of OpSec because they know that anyone could be listening in. We there are a bajillion movies where like, the evil serial killer terrorist or whatever is in the middle of doing his master crime to snare the Batman or whatever, and has the cop radio playing while he's doing it. And it's like, so, well, the cops are aware that people could be doing that if they were doing a crime. And so don't say on the radio, we're on the way to the warehouse to catch the Riddler right now.
Thank you, Bake Out, for the 2-month resub. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And Pinklin, thanks for giving us up to 5i5. I appreciate, or 5 eyes. Thank you, Pinklin.
Oh, it's the 5 eyes. Oh,
5
shit.
eyes, yeah. Somebody, let's see here. Goblin Hugger says, I did that shit all the time when I lived in Orlando. It was real fun doing ice spotting and outing their locations before they could enter places.
Based.
Huh.
That's wild.
Yeah. Like it's not illegal to talk about, like in I don't think in the United States it's legal. I do not think that in the United States it is illegal. So I think it is legal to just tell people the location and numbers of the police when you have spotted them,
Yeah, I mean, the police wear numbers and drive cars with license plates because we're supposed to be able to hold them to account for their actions, right?
Yes.
Obviously, loads of cops tape up their numbers and cover their numbers when they're being filmed and all this kind of stuff. But, like, hypothetically, it should be the completely squeaky clean legal thing to do, to get together with some pals and be like, this cop officer number 1104-2069 was here doing this thing today. That's like, because they should be accountable to us. Otherwise you're in a tyrannical police state.
And those are, it could be either one. Who knows which?
Yeah, well, who knows? It could be. It's a mystery. Yeah. It's a no-knock raids and stop and search. Yeah, I mean, it would be really bad to live in a tyrannical police state.
Yeah,
that would suck. Anyway, anybody else? Any comments on stuff?
I'm looking into the chat to see if they have any questions.
Okay, I'll have a scroll through.
I've done so much learning today. Thank you so much, Tia.
Yeah, I have nothing to offer. I just have dumb questions.
I feel useless on most Red Planet episodes, but like this one especially, I feel like, oh my god, I have no idea.
When I was preparing for the organizing interview that we did, and then for this again, and making sure that I was like all up to date, I'm just like, oh, this is all mundane, boring things that anyone could figure out, right? That everybody knows. Like, what? Like, why am I even like? I guess I could just be the mouthpiece for this episode, and just then like, and then now,
I feel like in both cases, I've been like nodding along with the stuff you're saying, and I can tell that that's exactly what you're thinking. Is that this is just standard stuff. And I'm like, I know a lot of the stuff you're already saying, but I know that everybody else is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, this is very dense.
Mule, you take notes when we're doing episodes, right?
I've taken a bunch of notes.
While I'm scrolling around looking for questions, is there stuff you're particularly struck by? You want to chat over again?
No, I think it's all really, really like it's okay. So obviously, I'm being a bit self-deprecating. Like I've heard of like some of this stuff, but in terms of like what, like applying it to situations is where I've struggled before, and like what situations you would apply it to. But of course, like, you know, just asking a few questions to Tyr then, like you said, Tyr, like, you know, earlier when I was asking about, like, you know, when is it right to do OpSec, when is it right to do InfoSec? Like, of course, if it's like a protest that's legal, then like, you don't need to worry about it. But then, you know, it's easily communicated that, of course, like, you know, if it's someone that is absolutely vital to a movement for whatever reason, you know, whether it's their skill or whether it's that they're like a public figure or whatever, yeah, you know, you want to protect them, kind of thing. So, you know, don't, and you know, the example that you gave about the renters union and stuff, like, that makes sense. And yeah, just it's I think it's something that we could, like, you know, definitely, like, what I'm learning about here is I'm gonna start to you know, put this stuff into sort of, like, you know, my life in general, because someone said it in the chat earlier, even if you're not planning on doing anything illegal or something that the state might not want you to monitor them for, just doing OpSec and InfoSec anyway is going to make their life harder in finding that stuff out anyway, right? Do you know what I mean? So if, of course, like, you know, you might support things that, you know, while we don't condone them here on Red Planet, if you're going to support those things, it makes sense to just do that, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you could see why more and more people would just end up doing that as a result of, like, you know, what the state are doing, and how they're treating us.
Yeah. Chicago ZZ42 in chat said earlier about using map points to practice good OpSec, and then they've explained what they meant by that. So I'm going to just read out that message. Map points works like this. You have a meeting location you want to mask, so you wait until the day of the meeting and publicly release an address to a second location. People will go there and get directions to the place. You can add more map points to make things harder to find at each point. The person there can also kind of feel the vibe of the people who come to ask for directions and can give fake locations to go to if they don't feel right, that's an interesting tactic. Yeah.
One of the protests I went to did that, where you came to the first place and everybody kind of stood around being like, well, who's in charge? What are we waiting for? Etc. And then somebody's like, hey, actually, we're meeting over there and we have to walk over there now. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Any questions from chat before we wrap up? Also, Tia, think of a homework to set the chat very quickly.
While you were gone, I started an anti-homework insurrection. So
I heard it.
Yeah,
it's not allowed. We're gonna force you to comply with our authoritarian homework regime now. You thought you could be an anti-homework rebel.
Your homework is to become ungovernable.
That's actually really good. That's actually really good homework.
Well, I mean, you know, but is there a genuine, real good question? Because actually, the chat do actually love getting homework. They're mad at us if we don't have stuff to give them. Is there like simple, small stuff that people could start doing to practice being a bit safer in how they communicate about stuff?
Maybe not the specifically communicating thing, but in their accounts and whatever. Google, like, just choose a random account, Google or search whatever internet search you want, and this is just open source, no surveillance, no, you know, special magical fucking cinematic enhance fucking tools shit, right? Just regular old-fashioned Google. Choose one of your accounts with a username, Google that username, and see if you can find it from open source, just from Google. Then open it up into that account's whatever you find into an incognito window, so you see what somebody who isn't logged in sees, and find out all of the information that account will give you, and then just keep going and seeing how far any of your accounts will chain. That's your homework. Understand how
that's very good.
Deep analysis can punch in.
That is good.
That's very, very good. Let's reiterate that in a minute, because I think chat will need that in really good and straightforward terms. But this has actually reminded me of another thing we can discuss before we wrap up. I actually mentioned this in the organizing interview as well. If people don't know, Tia was on organizing interviews where we talk about the very same stuff, but in only an hour. So not as much stuff, but yeah, like, hit the important points in an hour. And we talked about one of the things that I mentioned is that Tia has done this exact thing for me before. checking out how much of my personal information can be found. And you kept on referencing open source just now, because the thing that I'm bringing it up because the thing that I want to discuss before we wrap up is OSINT. Because I feel like we should just touch on that at some a little bit, right?
Exploiting open source intelligence is what made Robert. I'm almost there. Fill it in for me.
Robert
Evans.
Robert Evans, yeah.
What actually put him on the map in the first place? Like his whole like area of expertise is like being a journalist and going through and learning to do intelligence analysis on just things that are available on the internet, just because the internet's a place where basically everything's just already available. You know, when you make a tweet, you can't hide the tweet. When you write on Facebook, it's very difficult to like actually hide that from somebody.
Actually, yeah, Garrison from who works with Robert Evans on It Could Happen Here found Rittenhouse. When Rittenhouse killed those people, Garrison found, like, ID'd him because using OSINT. So to back up and let everybody else in on the conversation we're having, OSINT is open source intelligence. And so when we're talking about open source, right, as opposed to sources that are not open to everybody, right? So sources of information that are open to everybody, like, well, like when I'm saying that, your mind might go to something like Wikipedia, which is both open source in the fact that it can be edited by everybody, and open source in the fact that it's available to everybody. But it's not that kind of information, right? It's not like encyclopedic kind of biographies of stuff. Social media is the kind of thing we're talking about here, right? When you post online, it is everywhere. It is available to everyone. And even if you've deleted them, in many cases, it can be archived. And so, like, this OSINT, open source intelligence, is like a huge thing that anti-fascist researchers in the modern age are into. Like, and part of it is like people go through the social medias of people who are engaging in horrible fascist stuff and just archive all of it obsessively, just like putting everything down because you actually don't know what will be useful later. And then there's the other part of it, the analysis, where people are going through and looking and trying to figure out who people are when something horrible happens. Actually, I think it's one of the most recent episodes of It Could Happen Here. They did another one on OSINT. So if people want to go and listen and hear in a lot more detail what I'm talking about, check out the episode Zip Tie Guy, a case study for OSINT, where they talk through the guy with the zip ties from January 6th. The guy with all the zip ties who was very clearly planning to murder some people, how he was identified. It's a pretty interesting window into OSINT if you're interested in it. And I think we'll probably talk about OSINT a bunch more when M comes on to talk to us about cult research. But this practice you're describing for the homework, chat, I promise I'm explaining this for a reason, because this is stuff we're about to ask you to be doing. The practice that you're describing for the homework is basically doing OSINT to yourself and seeing what would be available to someone who doesn't have any kind of, state surveillance powers, someone who is just a stalker or a fascist or whatever, who's just looking around, what details that they could find out about you. Yeah.
That's all good stuff.
And it's about, and obviously it's also about what you choose to have public. So, for instance, again, I am a content creator. I'm not involved in any organizing to like go and break the law or whatever. And so, if I were, that would be really stupid of me, because my face and my full name are just everywhere. And so it'd be really, really quick for anybody to be able to ID me if I did something like that. Whereas other people, if you've chosen to, other people who've chosen to keep that information private because, you have that standard of privacy for yourself that I don't have, because your brain is good. You should check out and make sure that people can't just find your face and name if you don't want your face and name out on the internet. Basically.
Can I say something too? And I hope this is, let me know if I'm not correct, but please don't go to public figures and then do this and then go message them. Here's all the information I was able to get on you, just so you know this is available. People have done
that's
this
creep
to me.
shit.
People
That's
do this to
creep shit.
content creators. It's very creepy. And thank you for your help, but honestly, please don't do that.
I should clarify, when I said Tia did this to me, I asked her to make sure I couldn't be doxxed easily. She didn't just message me and be like, so this is your dad's driving license or something. But yeah, the practice of doing this to yourself, and if you do it for a friend or whatever, is pretty useful, because you are making your communication more safe that way. So
it's like when banks get hackers to try and hack their systems, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Similar thing, yeah.
Yeah, but on a much more kind of, amateur and like, amateur is a kind of considered a bit of a derogatory way, but like, accessible to everyone, a sort of layman's level.
How do you spell it? When you say
OSINT? Open, because it's open source intelligence.
Got it. And it's pronounced OSINT?
I say OSINT, but I don't know if...
Okay.
I say OSINT too.
OSINT, okay.
OSINT.
Not to be confused with ASINT, acoustic intelligence, which is
so the homework
stuff.
Okay.
Okay, what? No, hang on. This is purely a derail, but what is acoustic intelligence?
It's for sonar.
Sonar?
Like the base of intelligence for how we interpret sonar.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, Sophie. Sonar.
Obviously.
Earlier, you just a correction. Earlier, you were talking about how cops have their frequencies that you can kind of tap into and listen to, and it's not illegal to do that. But you called that an OpSec issue, but it's technically a ComSec issue, a communication security issue. Just
I'm getting owned at the end of this episode.
Honestly, thank you for clarifying. I didn't want to say anything, but.
Yeah, I knew that too. Yeah,
So does chat understand now what we're asking you to do? Because now, okay, hang on a second. Chat, 1's if you understand what the general gist is of what you're about to be asked to do, and 0 if you still aren't really getting it. Because if you are all getting it, then I'm going to get Tia to give you some specific instructions for your homework. Bunch of 1s, bunch of 1s, bunch of 1s.
The simple takeaway is just find out how many of your accounts can get connected to other accounts, and then do what you want with that information.
Yeah.
Google yourself. Yeah.
Chatters have a lot of experience.
It looks like everybody gets it.
Googling themselves.
Everybody seems very excited to Google themselves. Yes.
Okay, looks like everybody gets it. So let's check up on. Let's check up on last week's homework, which I don't expect many people did, because it was going outside, touching grass, big, scary, oh no, anxiety homework. Don't worry, chat, that's okay. But then Tia, hopefully you can give some handy instructions. That'll be the everybody's got to take notes moment. So chat, last week, because we were talking about squatting and community and locality and neighbors and stuff, we said that you should go meet your neighbors. Did you?
Let's do something different. Chat? Let's do smiley faces this time. Those really creepy dead-eye smiley faces that are default. Smiley face in the chat if you went out and you talked to a neighbor. You met a neighbor. And if you want, sad faces if you didn't. Now, you don't have to do a sad face, but some of you like to participate. So sad face if you didn't. Happy. Okay. Pixel Cooker. Now you're just bragging.
We've got a few.
Yeah, I'm actually really impressed, chat.
Like I say, it's a big, scary, go outside, touch grass, anxiety, oh no, homework.
My neighbors are snobby libs. That can happen. And like we said before, if you meet a crappy neighbor, please don't let that be a reason why you never meet your neighbors in the future. Crappy people exist. Don't okay, just it's a thing. Wow,
they're going to be there even if you don't know.
I'm genuinely impressed. I
am
completely sincerely mean it. Chat, I did not expect this good of a response. Yeah, good job, everybody.
Wow, okay.
Loads of people did it. That's cool. I didn't. I didn't do the homework this week. I mean, to be fair, I already know my neighbors, but I want to go meet like way more of the neighbors around.
I will say that I made a huge mistake I know most of my neighbors already. So I didn't need to do this homework, but I made a huge mistake. I was coming back from the gym. I went to the gym one day and I saw that there were some people in my building that I didn't recognize, and they were moving stuff into the building, and I thought, oh, well, they're movers inners, and they're not wearing masks. So I was very mad at that they came into my place and they weren't wearing masks. So I had my sort of like, don't fucking look at me, otherwise I'll tear your face off, face on. And that was bad. That was bad of me, because it turns out they're my new neighbors.
No.
And so, yeah, I made a huge mistake.
Mule has delayed socialism for decades by being mad.
I'm sorry, gang. I'm sorry, gang.
It'll never happen now.
Yeah.
All right. So, chat, get ready to take some notes. Tira's going to give you really good instructions on how to OSINT yourself.
Choose whichever of your accounts is the one that you feel most associated with your radical activity. So whether that's going to be your Discord, your Twitter, your something else, go into Google and that service and look yourself up on both of those services. Then, since you will undoubtedly find yourself on the page associated with that identity, put down every bit of information that is on that page that could hypothetically be on another page. Your birthday, that can be on 2 different pages. Your location, that can be in 2 places. The picture, the name, if they have a human name associated with it, the kind of things that they talk about in any bio line that they've made, and then if you need to, you can go back into their that selector's posting history, and but by this point you can start searching for other terms. You can see if sections of your name without year identifiers or like with different spacing sections will come up with identities on other platforms, and see how many times you can hop out from that initial place to other identities that you have accurately and successfully, and the amount of things that you've left behind for a stalker, for somebody who wants to make your life bad, for them to find. And yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Nice. That's good homework. And that's one that you can all do at home, at your little computer with Blanky, with hot drink.
Yeah,
we've successfully countered last week's big scary homework with a nice indoor in the dark
scary homework.
Yeah,
that's right. You can be comfy.
Yeah, scary in a different way, but in the way that chat loves. Cool. I guess. Actually, I did see one more thing, so I just want to scroll up to it. Shit. Somebody said, "Oh no, it's disappeared." Oh, this is terrible. I shouldn't have let it go.
Everyone repeat your old chat messages now.
Do you remember who
I
found
it? I found it. It was Peanut Butter Princess. And Peanut Butter Princess said, a tiny question about the air buffer. Probably don't want to use the same profile pictures on accounts, but I think that you kind of said that when you were describing the steps just now anyway, so...
She did,
that'll be something that like cleanly ties to accounts that might not have the same name or any other identifiers. It's just like, well, they're using the same profile pic, and it's not a common profile pic. Like mine is currently like a commission, so like not a lot of people using it.
Yeah, and also unless
like
someone comes
of yourself, for example,
mints your commissioned profile picture on the blockchain.
That's true. I just about NFTs.
What was I going to say? But the air gap doesn't have to be like I log in on this computer for my Sophie from Mars stuff, and I log in over there for my dark secret fetish account stuff. But like in terms of what you're describing here, where like what's accessible information for say a stalker, but if it were that you're doing stuff that you want to completely dissociate from your like legal identity or whatever, and because it's like radical activism stuff, then it would be better to do that kind of like physical separation.
If you're worried that the stalker in question is going to do hacking and do intrusions and try to put an implant on your machine, then maybe 2 separate machines could be advantageous to you. But if but for almost everybody, for almost everything, you don't really have to worry about that. And as we said, most of the stuff that we're trying to hide is safety stuff, not any sort of ideological thing. And so the amount of danger that you're preventing versus the amount of time you're saving, right? That's always going to be the equation that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And you can never get rid of danger. You can only reduce it.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I feel like this was a good one. Good discussion.
Yeah. Done so much learning. Thanks for coming on, Tyr.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's shout you. Let's make sure we shout you out because I want to make sure you definitely get promoted. And also, chat.
Yes.
I know a lot of you have been saying throughout. Oh, I'm gonna definitely rewatch this one because it's pretty information dense. The episode will be posted on my YouTube. You can always find it on my VODs section in my Twitch, but it's on my YouTube. So !YT. And my editor will also put up a few like clips from this. So if you're looking for a specific thing, that will be out there for you.
True. Yeah. And I need to shout this out. We are working. I might have already told this story, but we're working on it being a podcast.
Yeah.
I use Anchor to upload podcasts. I'm doing it for my TTRPG, light, fun, queer, dice rolling, role playing podcast, Rolling with Rainbows. Check it out if you're interested in those kinds of things. Not radical at all. Just us chatting and rolling some dice and hanging out. I used Anchor to I used Anchor to try and upload the Red Planet podcast, and it has not gone through. We're investigating. Hopefully it will be available as a podcast soon. We will see. I'm gonna try uploading everything again and never say communist or leftist or any of these words in any of the description, and see what happens. And wouldn't that be interesting if it changes things? So we'll see, chat. We'll see.
That's right. But yeah, Tyr, tell us where we can find you and how we can support you.
You can find me on YouTube at Pamphleteer, the channel. Pamphleteer, like the word pamphlet with an E and an R at the end, or on Twitter at pamphlet_TYR, the tier you see in this chat right here. And you see it's a great pun, a play on words where tier sounds the same way in both versions. Anyway, I do great video essays on my YouTube channel that I'm very proud of and that take me a million years to put together.
Best video essays in the game.
Yeah. Sorry, you do the best video essays in the game. I do the
No, it's you.
It's zeroth best. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, of course.
You're the Sigma video essays.
That explains why I have so few subs. Excellent. I am. I just my most recent one that I'm very proud of put out last month is on how the discourse around religion just is and all of that, and y'all should check it out.
Is that the one, The Birth of Christianity? Let's talk about Tradcats. Yeah, I'm looking at it live.
That sounds good.
Every time I watch a tier video, my brain expands and gets thicker and juicier.
Your brain expands?
Yes, my brain. Yes, it's a test of my meaty brain. I spent a really long time going around all over the internet telling everybody to watch Tier's information dominance series. They were fucking incredible. And actually, you and your wife did a cute little thing that was inspired by a little thing that I did. That's something people could go check out. I did my non-binary coming out video, which was very Martian poem. It's like the Watchmen, right, with the different moments in time. And Tyr and Grem did that as well, and it was better than my one, and I'm very jealous. Okay.
Sweet. Well, yeah.
Mule, where can we find you though?
Oh God!
Right now.
Yeah, let's just do it right now. Let's do the signups right now.
Okay. Well, yeah. As I said previously, I'm no longer a political streamer. I'm a speedrunner now. So that's that's the content you can expect from me if you come to find me on www.twitch.tv/DJ Mule. It's spelled exactly as it is underneath my head right here, DJ MUEL, and you can find me on Twitter at DJMUEL_, and I'm also on YouTube, and you can just find me there with DJMU3L. So there you go. What about Sophie? Where can you find Sophie from Mars? Where can you find Sophie from Mars?
Sophie from Mars.
Sophie from Mars.
Just look it up. I did good SEO this time. I did.
Use the hacker skills you learned today, chat. And find Sophie from Mars. You'll be able to find her Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Patreon.
Patreon's the important one, though. So
Patreon is the most important one. Yeah. Give Sophie your money.
Give me money. Yeah. Giving Sophie money is based, and not giving Sophie money, that's cringe.
Quite cringe.
It's very cringe.
All right, everybody. See you next week.
Nailed it.
All
Absolutely
right.
Nailed it.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
And as you will soon find out, you cannot defeat an enemy that you cannot see.